Good evening. My name is Kathleen Brown, Chair of the Virginia Beach School Board, and I call this meeting to order at 6 p.m. on this 10th day of February 2026. Madam Clerk, would you please announce the roll?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Present in the school board chamber are Chair Brown, Vice Chair Weems, Mr. Bowensteel, Mr. Callen, Mr. Culpepper, Mr. Cummings, Ms. Dwyer, Ms. Felton, Dr. Green, and Ms. Rogers. And currently on Zoom is Ms. Melnick. And Ms. Melnick, for the record, can you state your reason and location?
Yes, hello, everyone. I am in Florida just for personal reasons.
Thank you.
Thank you. Please join me in a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance as you are able. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You're next. You're next. Okay, we are now on our student, employee, and public awards and recognitions, and we will start with Dr. Green.
Our first recognition is for the Virginia Health and Physical Education Educator of the Year. Please welcome Kathleen Foster of Bayside High School. The Virginia Health Educator of the Year Award recognizes an outstanding professional who has demonstrated excellence and leadership in school or community health education. The annual honor celebrates an individual who positively impacts students or community wellness through effective instruction, advocacy, and service to the profession. The award is presented to each year at the annual conference of the Virginia Association for Health, Physical Education, Recreation, and Dance. Kathleen Foster started working at Bayside High School about 16 years ago as a security assistant before becoming a health and physical education teacher. She previously served as an athletic trainer at Bayside and is now sponsor of the Anchor for Life Club that assists military families. Ms. Foster exemplifies excellence in health and physical education through her unwavering commitment to student wellness, engagement, and fitness. Her captivating instruction, positive relationships with students, and dedication to child development sets a high standard for our Bayside school community. Congratulations, Ms. Foster. We are proud of you. This concludes the school board recognitions for this evening.
Okay, it is my privilege to recognize two of the steady hands and calm voices who keep our school board functioning smoothly. Our dedicated clerks, Ms. Regina Taniato and Ms. Nina Wadowski. School Board Clerk Appreciation Week is February 16th through 20, and we proudly spotlight the vital role Ms. Toniato and Mrs. Wadowski play in supporting our school board members, the superintendent, and our entire school division. School board clerks manage complex schedules, maintain critical records, and organize meetings while serving as an important connection point for our staff, families, and the community. Their work demands exceptional professionalism, discretion, and unwavering attention to detail. While much of what they do happens behind the scenes, their impact is felt in every aspect of our school division's operations and directly supports our commitment to collaboration and transparency across our organization. Mrs. Taniato is our primary school board clerk. Your leadership and commitment ensure that board operations are handled with accuracy and care. From preparing agendas and maintaining official records to coordinating logistics and responding to public inquiries, your work provides the foundation that allows our board members to focus on serving students, staff, and families and advancing our shared goals of helping students become future ready. Mrs. Wadowski, our deputy clerk, your readiness to step in and your consistent attention to detail ensure continuity and stability. Your support and dedication help keep the work of the board moving forward without interruption. This year, as school board clerks have continued to navigate evolving expectations, new technologies, and the daily demands of a fast-paced educational environment, your resilience and dedication have been nothing short of inspiring. On behalf of the school board and our entire school division, thank you for your exceptional service. Please join me in applauding Mrs. Regina Taniato and Nina Wadowski for their professional care and commitment to bring their roles every day. All right, one more thing. Okay, we are now on to the adoption of the agenda, and if there's no objection at this time, we are going to add a G to information, which is the budget from workshop, and we discussed that in our workshop. Is there any objections to that? Okay, seeing none, I call for a motion to approve the agenda as presented and modified. Moved by Dr. Green, seconded by Mr. Bowensteel. Any discussion? Seeing none, I call for the vote to approve the agenda as presented and modified.
And Ms. Melick, how do you vote for the adoption of the agenda?
Yes.
Okay, 1 second. Okay, so Madam Chair, we're going to have 10 ayes for the approval of the agenda as presented and modified. Thank you.
Is it 10 or 11?
It's 11. We have unanimous vote.
All right, thank you. All right, we are now on to the superintendent's report. Dr. Robertson, do you have any recognitions this evening?
Yes, Madam Chair, I do have one recognition this evening. We are pleased to introduce you to Kristen Schumann, formerly an assistant principal at Indian Lakes Elementary School, who is now the principal at Christopher Farms Elementary School. And I see you have some guests.
Yes. First, I just want to say thank you. It's a great opportunity. This is my husband, Dan. My son, Luke, who's in 8th grade in the IB program at Plaza. My mom, Kathy, and Mr. Warren, the principal at Indian Lakes.
Congratulations. So Dan, we appreciate you sharing her with us because it's a big job. So thank you very much. That's all.
Thank you. We are now on to the approval of the meeting minutes. Are there any modifications to the January 27th, 2026 meeting minutes as presented? Seeing none, the January 27th, 2026 meeting minutes were moved by Ms. Dwyer, seconded by Mr. Cummings. Any discussion? Seeing none, I call for the vote to approve the meeting minutes.
And Ms. Melick, how do you vote for the approval of the minutes?
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have 11 ayes. The motion did pass for the approval of the January 27th meeting minutes.
Thank you. We are now on to public comments, and we will hear public comments on matters relevant to pre-K through 12 public education in Virginia Beach and the business of the school board and the school division from citizens and delegations who signed up with the school board clerk prior to noon today. The purpose for the public comment section is for the school board to offer an orderly forum to receive public comments during the school board meeting. I call upon all speakers and all persons in chambers to be civil in discussion and decorum. Whatever views you wish to express, the school board wants to hear from you and to ensure that all viewpoints and perspectives are heard. The best way to do this is for all of us to strive for civility and respect. Madam Clerk, would you please introduce the first speaker?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Our first student speaker is Ali Shoup.
Hi, my name is Ali Shoup, and I'm a junior at Salem High School. Thank you for the opportunity to speak here tonight. I'm here to talk about Club America. Club America is an initiative started by Turning Point USA, an organization that refers to itself as conservative. There's a chapter starting in my school and other schools in VPCPS. I speak on behalf of many of my classmates, a few of which are here today, when I say that we are concerned. Club America is an activist club, which is stated clearly on their website in multiple places. When I saw this, my first question was, activism for what? Well, they say it's activism for their values and beliefs. However, in section 4-23.3 of your policies, it states that teachers should address political topics as impartially and objectively as possible. How is blatantly promoting conservatism in our public school system not infringing on this policy? This past weekend, Turning Point USA held their own halftime show during the Super Bowl. Their headliner was Kid Rock, a music artist that has outwardly expressed his pleasure in statutory rape and being explicit with underage girls. At many protests organized by Turning Point USA, racial slurs have been yelled as chants. In a media video paid for by Turning Point, one of their field directors shouted, "The only thing the Nazis didn't get right is they didn't keep effing going." Alliance Defending Freedom is an anti-LGBTQ+ group that ties homosexuality to pedophilia and says it will destroy our society. This group has been featured in partnerships and conferences with Turning Point. The founder, on multiple occasions, publicly thanked anti-immigrant and anti-Muslim activists for their guidance. What message do you think that sends to your female, African-American, Jewish, LGBTQ+, immigrant, and Muslim students? I could go on about the questionable ethics of this organization, but the real issue at hand is this. We feel unsafe. On the school board website, Put Students First is plastered on the home page. If this is truly your mission, please listen to us. In a country where your citizenship not being questioned is a privilege, freedom of speech is something we are learning to not take for granted, and being listened to when asking for help is a miracle. These things matter. Listening to the voices of your students, hearing the worries of parents, and respecting your own policies is more important than ever. Students come to school looking for safety, but if there are organizations like this present in their safe space, trust is lost. Put Students First is a title you should only wear proudly if you're actively taking steps to do that. What students are you choosing to put first? Ask yourself that before you approve the next chapter or let the active ones continue.
Our next speaker is Annabelle Murillo.
Hi, I'm Annabelle Mariello. I go to Independence Middle School. What I'm going to talk about is stuff from school. My first topic is school lunches are really bad. Because one day I got a salad. It was very bad, so I had applesauce. And yeah. My next one is bullying must be addressed because I was bullied by a teacher. Because I got a concussion at school, and I had my doctor told me to go off paper and like all the usual basics, and I politely asked my teacher if she could slow down, and she said you have to catch up, and I politely asked her one more time, and she said sucks to be you. So yeah, and I reported her, but I never got an apology. I got 2 concussions at school. One was an accident and one was on purpose. This same teacher was a class that at like the last time of the class, she made us watch CNN news. And when we could be using that time for her helping us with our missing assignments. And My other one is to put cameras in blind spots of the school because that's where one of my concussions happened because a girl banged my head in the wall. My second last topic is there should be a student representative for each school to reach out to the school board, so then to report the issues. And my last topic is substitutes. The substitute should teach the material the teacher would have rather than just sitting there and not teaching.
Our next speakers will be Clark Murphy, Cody Connor, and then Diane Muscovac.
Good evening, Chair Brown, Superintendent Dr. Robinson, members of the school board, and staff. Thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. So I teach college English as a second language here in Virginia Beach, and I want to talk for a few minutes about immigrant students, not as political points, but as people. More specifically, I want to talk about the immigrant students I teach every day. They reflect the true character of America more clearly than political rhetoric that too often strips immigrants of their humanity across the country. In my classroom, I spend my days with immigrants working towards something profoundly American: education, opportunity, and a better future. My students are immigrants pursuing college-level education while navigating work, study, and life in a new language and a new country. And without hesitation, I can say this: they are the most diligent, hardworking, and dedicated students I've ever taught. Many of them work full-time jobs, often coming to class after overnight shifts, exhausted but determined. And on top of that, they attend college. This isn't easy work, and they don't take it lightly. What I'm describing isn't abstract. It's what I see in my classroom every day. A student who stays after class to ask thoughtful questions about an assignment, a student who revises a presentation outline again and again, not because it's required, but because they want to get it right. These are moments you'll never see on a transcript, but they tell you everything. These aren't signs of weakness, they're signs of discipline, dedication, and resilience. And right now, that dedication matters even more. Across America, immigrants are openly targeted, imprisoned, denied dignity and respect. They are spoken about as problems to be removed, rather than as people with dignity and worth. Calls for mass deportation continue, and threats of increased enforcement have intensified. Fear shows up again and again in political language until it starts to feel normal. For immigrant students and their families, that fear is lived every day, and yet they keep showing up. They keep learning. They keep believing in education. Their voices enrich our classrooms. They bring values such as respect for elders, responsibility to family and community, and perseverance through hardship. Because of them, our classrooms are stronger. Immigrant students are not a burden on our schools or our communities. They're part of our strength. As a teacher, I am proud of my students. As an American, I am grateful for them. And as educators, all of us here share a responsibility to see immigrant students not through the lens of national rhetoric, but through the reality of their effort, character, and humanity. They are already showing us who America can be if we're willing to listen. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Cody Connor, then Diane Muscovac, then Andy Bond.
School is where it all begins, teach science and arithmetic and how to feel ashamed of being different. If we knew we all belonged, who would get blamed for all that's wrong, and everyone might see the true villain? So let them grow in ignorance, convince them that it's really bliss, but all of that unknown is where their fear lives. So, and if you want to have your way, just stoke that fear some every day and point out someone else as the terrorist. Child, are you watching us now? See how it's all falling down. Let ourselves become deceived. We trade our rights for tyranny. See what all our fear and greed has made us. Don't look away. 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 Can you hear the whistles blow? The streets are filling up with smoke. It stings your eyes and people disappear. Freedom's such a fragile thing that if you do not let it ring, you can find that it'll disappear. Child, are you watching us now? See how it's all falling down. Let ourselves become deceived. Now liberty is on her knees. The book is closed. The torch is burning now. Don't look away. Don't look away. Don't look away. Maybe you can make it right someday. Don't look away. 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 Don't look away.
Our next speaker is Diane Muscovac, Andy Bond, and then Melissa Luxon.
Good evening. Tonight I would like to share insights from an interview with a licensed professional counselor who works with the public school environment and reflects on how adding a school chaplain could provide another meaningful layer of support for students. During the interview, she reports that teachers, counselors, and support staff work incredibly hard to connect with students on every level, academically, emotionally, and socially. But the reality is that it's becoming increasingly difficult. Teachers are balancing lesson plans, classroom management, administrative responsibilities, testing requirements, and countless other demands. Counselors and support staff carry heavy caseloads, often supporting hundreds of students at once. Despite their dedication, there simply are not enough hours in the day to meet every need that walks through the school doors. And there are so many needs. Students come to school carrying stress, anxiety, family challenges, grief, loneliness, and questions about identity and purpose. Schools have become not just centers for learning, but centers for emotional support, crisis response, and community care. This is where the idea of school chaplain comes into focus. A chaplain does not replace teachers, counselors, or existing mental health professionals. Instead, a chaplain offers another heart, another trusted presence within the school community. Someone who listens, someone who builds relationships, someone who provides compassionate support in moments when students simply need to be heard. When we think about the support network around a child, we already recognize many essential roles. We have parents, of course, we have teachers, we have counselors, we have school support staff. Adding a chaplain expands the circle, strengthening the sense of community that surrounds and uplifts students. The LPC that was interviewed emphasized that collaboration is key. A chaplain becomes part of the multidisciplinary team working alongside educators and counselors to help meet students' emotional human needs, not replacing clinical services, but complementing them. Many of us have heard the saying, it takes a community to raise a child. In today's schools, that statement has never been more relevant. As the needs of students grow more complex, so must the ways we support them. A school chaplain represents an additional layer of care, a reminder that education is not only about academics, but about nurturing the whole person. By expanding the community within our schools, we create more opportunity for connection and compassion and support. Every child is a shared responsibility, so let's work together and change the hearts of people starting at a young age. And if you want to know more, you can always look up nationalschoolchaplainassociation.org. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Andy Bond, Melissa Luxon, and then Antoinette Kahn.
Madam Chairman, Madam Vice Chair, Dr. Robertson, thank you very much for having us. On the topic of student demonstrations, I'm very grateful that you're taking the topic up. A couple of meetings ago, I think you all were talking about it, and the debate was more around why are you talking about it as opposed to the substance of the policy and the changes. And I didn't quite understand it. It was almost as if there was an event that precipitated it, that you had to first determine whether that was sufficiently worthy to then cause you to look at the policy instead of just saying, oh, we should look at this policy. As to the substance, it seems that there are things that are contradictory. Principals are supposed to work with the students to create minimal interruption of instruction. But interruption of instruction is prohibited. So you can't have minimal if you can't have any. So if you could clear that up, that'd be great. And also, third parties may not be involved or attend, but an elected official who is assigned to the host school, and it's written in the negative, elected officials who are not assigned to the host school or who have not been assigned to assist with events at the host school, they're third parties. But if you're an elected official who is assigned and doing those other things, then you're not a third party, and therefore you can participate because third parties are not allowed. And I'd ask you to clear that up too. Thank you very much. I'm not in favor of interrupting instruction for any reason. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Melissa Luxon, Antoinette Kahn, and then Heather Sipe.
Good evening. Tonight, I want to speak less about policy language, more about how we think about children, because that belief shapes every policy choice we make. So I want to explain this in a way I would explain it to a sixth grader. There are two kinds of adults. Some adults believe kids are people who are learning, growing, forming opinions, and practicing how to use their voice. Other adults believe kids should only speak when an adult allows it, that their voice only matters when it reflects what the adult already believes. Kids know the difference immediately. A sixth grader knows which adults listen and which adults want control. That distinction matters because kids don't magically become engaged citizens at 18. They learn how to participate by practicing now, by speaking, questioning, and yes, sometimes protesting. That brings me to Policy 540. I do not support these changes. The policy, as amended in 2024, was perfectly fine. It's remarkable how quickly a problem appeared once Ms. Rogers accepted an invitation from students a few months ago. Suddenly, we needed new definitions, new restrictions, and a policy rewrite, all to ensure that support from an elected official could be labeled as third-party interference. This urgency to change the policy lays solely at the feet of Vice Chair Carolyn Weems, who does not believe student activism strengthens student learning. And when an elected school board member publicly rejects a well-established educational principle, policy becomes a tool to silence rather than support students. That belief matters because 2 Virginia Beach high schools have planned a student demonstration called Ice Out on February 20th. Students didn't invent their fear. They're watching what is happening in other communities. Yesterday, the Minneapolis City Council president confirmed reports of ICE agents circling school zones during dismissal times and following community observers back to their homes. 52 civil rights and economic justice organizations warned in a letter yesterday that aggressive federal enforcement has destabilized entire communities, collapsing local businesses with estimated 50 to 80% drops in revenue and job losses. Families too afraid to go to work or take their kids to school. I understand that Virginia Beach Chief Police Newdigate has communicated to the city manager and to the superintendent that there are currently no ICE operations underway in Virginia Beach. Well, that is just not true. But Dr. Robertson, here is the concern. Preparedness does not begin after something happens. So my question to this board and Dr. Robertson is the same as it was 2 weeks ago. Now that it has started in Virginia Beach, what is our plan? Students are doing exactly what we tell them to do in civics class. They are paying attention, they are processing information, they are speaking up, and instead of guiding them through that moment, we are responding by tightening policies that restrict when and how they are allowed to use their voice. Kids are not property, they are not political inconveniences, and they are not problems to manage. They are people learning how to use their voice, and policies like these teach them.
And that is time.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Antoinette Khan, and then Heather Sipe.
Good evening, Superintendent, Madam Chairman, and members of the board. My name is Antoinette Khan. Across education and healthcare, we keep hearing the word shortage, but in many professions, including teaching, the issue is often not the absence of qualified people, but the conditions on which they are asked to work. As someone who has spent a career listening carefully to patients, students, and colleagues, I pay attention when thoughtful questions come my way. Recently, questions about employee healthcare costs and transparency have come up in my community, and they deserve a clear and respectful response. Healthcare benefits are deeply personal to our teachers and staff. When premiums change, it affects household budgets, career decisions, and long-term retention. I understand that VBCPS is a self-insured employer and that rising medical and pharmacy costs make adjustments necessary to preserve the health fund balance as fiscal responsibility dictates. At the same time, when systems are complex, transparency becomes even more important. Asking how costs are structured, how savings are applied, and how year-over-year employee impacts are evaluated is not an accusation. It's good governance. My hope is that the board reviews these necessary adjustments, it also continues to ask, how do these decisions affect long-term workforce stability? How do we remain competitive in attracting and retaining experienced educators? And how do we communicate these changes transparently and clearly to the people most affected? As a self-insured employer, I also encourage continued clarity about how those projections are evaluated and how long-term sustainability models are communicated to the staff. School boards have a responsibility to ensure clear reporting, independent analysis when appropriate, and communication that builds trust with employees. Teachers and staff deserve clarity about how benefit decisions are made and how those decisions affect them. Strong schools depend on strong professionals, and strong professionals need systems that are both financially stable and transparently managed. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Heather Sipe.
Good evening, Chairwoman Brown, Vice Chair Weems, Dr. Robertson, members of the school board. My name is Heather Sipe, and I am president of the Virginia Beach Education Association. During the workshop session, you were presented options by Mercer, where the division would push a greater percentage increase to the employees' contributions and lessen the employer's contributions. You do not retain employees by putting greater financial burdens on them. The raises staff have seen the past few years haven't kept up with the cost of living, and this year's health insurance premium increases were a huge hit. It is imperative that you not pass on increases to employee premiums as a cost-saving method for the division. As for staff raises, when is the step disparity on the unified scale going to be addressed? Much like putting off investing in capital improvement, the longer you wait to address the step disparity, the more it is going to cost. Maybe it isn't feasible to raise the full 0.5%, but is there potential to raise it 0.25% so that those on 0 to 14 years on the unified scale see 1.25% on their step? You need to show that you are making a real effort to address these concerns. Now for the proposed language on policy 5-40 on student-led assemblies. There's a whole lot in there, but I don't have time for everything. It is truly concerning that as a school board, you would want to limit the ability of any school board member to participate in any type of school event. This is a very slippery slope you are treading on. You limit the ability of any member not assigned to a school to attend a student-led assembly now, and then what's next? Student awards and other school assemblies? Student concerts and plays? Fundraisers, special events like Little Feet Meet and Field Days? Where does it end? Any school board member should be able to attend any school event of any kind at any time, regardless of whether or not that school is in their district and therefore assigned to them. I understand not wanting random third-party participation in events, but to deny school board members? Consider that.
So, Madam Chair, we're going to move on to our online speaker. Kim Mayo, please unmute. Ms. Mayo, please unmute.
Good evening. I'm requesting Virginia Beach Elementary School VDOE ratings get added back to the agenda. I'll put this in an email and defer to Chair Brown on what timing she thinks is best. The public should be updated regularly on the plan to improve our elementary schools. VDOE released results of its first school performance and support framework. It measures how well schools are performing in Virginia. Virginia Beach has 55 elementary schools. 23 are either off track or in need of intensive support. 13 News now published a summary including the schools which school administration did not outline in their January presentation to school board and the viewers. The off-track schools are Hermitage, Pembroke, Pembroke Meadows, Arrowhead, Brookwood, Indian Lakes, Luxford, Malibu, Parkway, Princess Anne, SeaTac, Thalia, W.T. Cook, White Oaks. And the 9 needing intensive support are Bayside, Bird Neck, Diamond Springs, Green Run, Holland, Lansdowne, Newtown, Point of View, and B.F. Williams. I want to share specifics on subgroups and analysis during a future speech, not tonight. Thank you, and happy School Board Appreciation Month.
And Madam Chair, online speaker number 2 is not there, so that concludes our speakers for this evening.
Okay, thank you. That brings us to our policy review committee recommendations. Welcome, Cami Linetti, School Board Attorney.
Good evening, Madam Chair, Vice Chair, School Board members, and Dr. Robertson. I'm Cami Linetti, the School Board Attorney, and I will be presenting to you for the information agenda the PRC recommendations from the January 28, 2026 meeting. The first one up is Policy 322. This is tuition fees. 322 is in your business section. The recommendations happen in Section B for non-resident employee students. The recommendation is to remove the inclusion of CSEP employees as those employees who are entitled to have, full-time employees who are entitled to have their students attend school. And then there would be new explanations in the sections on there. There's 1, 2, and 3. And so 1 would read, and again, this enrollment will be contingent upon meeting requirements outlined in Regulation 510 and 514. Then Section 1 would be, non-resident full-time VBCS employee is no longer employed with the VBS or is no longer a full-time employee for VBCPS. A non-resident student of such employee may be allowed to continue enrollment in VBCPS until, without tuition through the end of the current 9-week period. 2, at the school principal's sole discretion, the student may remain enrolled with VBCPS through the end of the school year. However, tuition must be paid for the remainder of the school year or any portion thereof that the student attends. Continued enrollment is conditioned on behavior, attendance, and academic progress and the provision of transportation by the student's family and payment of tuition. And 3, students allowed to continue an enrollment in BPCPS after their non-resident parent ceases employment will not be eligible to continue in BPCPS once their extension is concluded unless the student meets another category under Regulation 510.1. So those are the recommended amendments to Policy 322. Are there any questions? Hearing no questions, we'll move on to Section 3. Again, Policy 397, which is in Section 3, the naloxone administration in response to a suspected opioid overdose in a school setting. We added this policy a number of years ago. Some changes in law have come to this, and so the changes that now, where it used to say only in middle and high school could you have this, now it's in all schools. So you will see in subsection B, under definitions, under 4 school settings, we removed middle and high school. Also in C, for a sentence, also remove middle and high school. And those are the recommended changes for this policy. Are there any questions? And this did go through the SHAB before it came back to us. Hearing no questions, that will move us on to 514, which is in the school zone attendance section, for then the recommended the policy will reflect the changes that we just made. Going into section F. In section 3, you'll notice that we've moved out children of school-based employees. We've moved out the reference to CSEP employees because that was a policy we just pulled out on the tuition. So the policy change in 514 reflects the changes that we've just did in the tuition 322. Are there any questions? Hearing no questions, then we'll move on to policy 540. 540 is student-led demonstrations. This has been up before you before, went back to PRC. I don't know if Ms. Williams, if you want to explain, you did provide some additional information on the board. There is a version of the policy, as you saw it last time, it has yellow highlights on it. The actual policy changes are over here in the agenda package, so make sure you're looking at that. But what you saw in yellow, what you have on your desk, which is on the main desk outside, will show you the changes from last time. Would you like me to go through the policy? How would you like me to handle this, Mrs. Williams?
Excuse me. Well, we can just go over, it's very minimal changes from what y'all got 2 weeks ago in our last meeting. So if you look at the policy statement is exactly the same as you saw last time. And remember, and we brought this up last time, we removed equitable because it has demonstrations in a manner that is fair. This new version completely gets rid of purpose because it is repetitive of the first paragraph under A. In B, definitions, we got input from a colleague, actually it was Ms. Rogers, and so we added the definition of student-led. That was not on the one that you saw previously. That is B, definitions. Definitions 2, 3, and 4 are exactly the same that you've seen before. The definition of student activism and student organization, we did not think that we needed those since they were not mentioned, so we deleted those two. Number 5, third party, now says any individual or organization not affiliated with Virginia Beach City Public Schools, parents or family members, employees, elected officials who are not assigned to the host school or who have not been assigned to assist with events at the host school or site of demonstration. Meaning, if you're a teacher, if a demonstration is happening at school A and you're a teacher at school X, you need to stay at school X and continue teaching. If you're a teacher at school A, where a demonstration is happening, and the principal has said, we need another teacher out there for safety reasons or whatever, and he assigns you, and you're there in the school, you are not a third party. But if you're at a totally different school, that is the third party.
Mrs. Williams, looking at that, I can see now why, what I'm hearing what the speakers are saying. I think the term elected officials probably should have come somewhere else in the sentence because it really meant to employees. It really said employees and officers.
Right.
And I'm wondering if flipping elected officials somewhere else in the sentence would be clear because it was really meant who are assigned to the host school have been assigned to assist with events. That was to apply to employees.
Right.
Or
We were
officials.
talking about, and after I heard the speaker, I thought the same thing. We're talking about employees because we heard in depth from Mr. Delaney, because he was a principal at a high school, that of course our first priority is to keep these students safe. And for me, the second priority was to make sure that they did not miss instructional time. And so in some cases, as Mr. Delaney told the Policy Review Committee, is that it takes quite a orchestrated, a lot of different steps go on for a principal working with students, doing a demonstration to make sure that everybody is safe. And so in some cases, extra people need to be assigned to the demonstration. So that's only, that is, so schools, parents or family members, and maybe then elected officials and employees who are not. So I think that you're right. I think we should just flip elected officials and employees there. Yeah, so we can take a motion on that later. Okay, so student rights remains the same, 1, 2, and 3. We deleted the request for administrative review if demonstration approval is denied because we thought that it's up to the principal. The principal knows the school. The principal works with the students, and so he's in charge of that school. And basically, this is the practice that has been going on. Our principals work with students to plan these demonstrations, so this is putting in practice into policy. E, student responsibility stays the same. F, request and approval process stays the same for 1 and 2 and 3. G, school responsibilities. 2 words are taken out in number 2, equitably and. H stays the same, I stays the same, J stays the same, K stays the same, and then L, since we have a different policy, we just deleted all of L. And so it shortens up the policy because, again, that was input from some of our colleagues.
All right, Dr. Green?
Madam Chair, can you just add Ms. Melnick to the queue?
What order did she put herself in?
Probably right after Dr. Green.
Okay, so it'll be Dr. Green, then Ms. Melnick.
All right, thank you. Ms. Linetti, I have 2 questions, and they may just be clarifying points for myself. With regards in the definitions, number 5, with third parties, I've heard from a lot of my constituents, especially parents, that were concerned, and I just want to make sure I'm not misunderstanding or passing on incorrect information. If a school is in my, say, district, such as Bayside High, Princess Anne, would I be permitted to go there for a demonstration or if there's an organizing event? As the school board representative that was elected by those parents.
Let me start by saying, if we were to move elected official in front of employees here, then it wouldn't be tied to a sign. So I don't think it was ever intended, those schools that you sign up to represent you, that would only be the ones you went to. The assignment to a school was meant to go to employees, as Mrs. Weems explained. If you're in one school, you can't leave it to go to another school. Other than that, the question is, as written, then it would just be elected officials are not able to attend. They would be considered third parties and would not be able to go to a student-led demonstration as drafted right now.
Well, I thank you for the clarification, and I hope we can revisit that and come to some type of compromise with that, because I did hear from several parents about that, because as an elected official representing a district, I feel that I should have the opportunity to go to a school that I represent. So I'm hoping that the committee, the Policy Review Committee, would consider making that modification. My second question, and it may be more of a comment, is related to number 2 under section E about the spontaneity of demonstrations. And I'm looking at this from the perspective of having been on that side of the table with Ms. Woodhouse, Mr. Delaney, Dr. Brower, and as a principal, assistant principal, we know things happen in schools that are unpredictable. And certainly our policies guide us in giving us the safety guidelines. So I have a hypothetical situation because we always want to get it right when we are administrators. I'm at one lunch. and all of a sudden, and I'm going to use Catholicism because I'm Catholic, I have a group of students, Mr. Delaney is too. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said that. I have a group of students who decide right before they go back to class for an exam that they're going to go in the corner and do their rosary. And we know what happens when people see, the crowd grows, and they're doing their rosary, praying for, that everything will go well on an exam or a big test. How would that be handled? Would that be perceived as a spontaneous event that's prohibited? Would it not? Would students get disciplined for it? I guess I'm trying to discern where the overreach begins and ends. And my point in using that extreme of an example is how subjective this process is. And if we're going to put, airtight parameters on it, we have to allow for the flexibility that comes with students. They're unpredictable. And those of us who have been in schools, we cannot always plan for every little thing. I mean, sometimes we have to react in a way that would negate us, having to change a policy. But I feel that we lock ourselves into a hole when we say nothing spontaneous, because that can become very subjective. And I hope that the PCR would consider that as well. Thank you.
Ms. Melnick?
Thank you. So, full transparency for the public. This policy was adopted by the school board on June 16, 1981. It was amended on August 21st, 1990. It was amended on July 16, 91, on June 15, 1992, on February 12, 2019, and that particular amendment was in response to the Parkland shooting. It was also amended by this school board, minus a few of the newly elected, but half of this board amended this policy on August 13th, 2024, unanimously. So what happens, and this is where I'm trying to inject some logic and just some logic into this. Why are we talking about this so quickly after this board amended this in 2024? To be honest, to the public, this came forward from a former school board member who was upset about a school board member who showed up at a student-led protest. Let me make one thing clear to the public. There was nothing that happened in any of our schools that is causing this policy to come up again, other than a school board member who came to a student-led protest. Perhaps as adults, we could have talked about that amongst the 11 of us, even publicly, and come to an understanding without getting the community so upset about the changes in this policy. It's very punitive, first of all. It also looks like, we're just making things up that haven't even happened. It doesn't happen very often, first of all, that there's a student-led protest. And kudos to the students who do have these student-led protests when they have them. They have always followed rules. Those same rules have always applied that's in the policy right now. Those were in there before. Principals having to approve a student-led protest. I think I said it the last time we talked about this, that the student who planned this at First Colonial High School sat down with the principal. It was all mapped out for safety purposes. Somebody in the board mentioned this is all about student safety. That's always been paramount in our schools. the students actually wanted the protest somewhere out front, and the principal said, no, not a safe place. We're going to put you in the back in a safe, confined area, and that's where this is going to happen. So there wasn't anything that happened. This is one person upset because of a school board member who showed up in a t-shirt. I mean, that is fair to say to this public. That is exactly what happened. And then I think in watching the policy review committee video, I guess really I'd like to know Ms. Felton's opinion, because she wasn't given the changes to this policy in advance of the meeting. It was handed to her last minute, and she didn't get a chance to even look at any of this to really discuss it in depth with her colleagues. I have a problem with the elected official thing. You know, I don't show up to everything. I really don't, but I don't like being told that I can't show up to something when the people voted for me to be there. That should never be the case for school board members in our schools. That's our responsibility. I've never shown up for a student-led demonstration, but and the last thing is spontaneous. You know, that's so rare, but there's a lot that's happening during our one lunches, and we need to be mindful of that. It's why we created these one lunches. Students have ability to go in the gym and do things and club meetings and this, that, and the other. And I think that's when those things should happen. I don't think there's anything wrong with this, but I think we're trying to think of something that's going to happen, and we just can't predict every step a kid is going to make. And these principals have a handle in their buildings. They know their students, and students are good. They really are good. And this thing, I think, just makes it seem like we don't care about our students, we don't trust our kids, and that all kids are bad. And that's just not true. All kids are good. Thanks.
Ms. Rogers.
Thanks so much. So I appreciate that the PRC looked at the changes that I proposed for this policy, and I am mostly happy with, I'll say, the merge of the two policies, if you will. I do have a couple of questions, though. For Section B5, the third party, I would make a request to exempt school board members. I'd like to direct my colleagues to the Code of Virginia, Section 22.1-79. It's the powers and duties of the school board, and it says each school board shall, number one, see that the school laws are properly explained, enforced, and observed, and number two, secure by visitation or otherwise as full information as possible about the conduct of the public schools in the school division, and take care that they are conducted according to the law and with the utmost efficiency. It is our responsibility per the state code that we go into our schools, that we are there, and we cannot, by law, be exempt from going to a school based on any assignment. That is clear. And I would not want to have to hire an attorney to make sure that I can do my job. So I would propose that we exempt school board members from number 5. After that, I have a question about E. Letter D says request and approval process. D says staff sponsor if applicable. But then in school administrators, that section, and I think that's F, 5, it says no resources or employees and agents will be used to promote student-led demonstrations. So if they're allowed to have a staff sponsor, I'm not sure how that staff sponsor is not allowed to help the students in promoting these demonstrations. If we're going to have, with a club, the staff sponsor usually assists the students with promoting the dates, the times, this is where the club's going to be, this is whose room it's going to be in, whatever. If they're going to have a staff sponsor, would it not then make sense on a practical matter for those sponsors to be able to promote these demonstrations with the students that they're sponsoring?
I'd have to defer to the school administration as to what school sponsors do and don't do.
Okay, so Mr. Delaney, is that something that normally would happen with a staff sponsor with clubs and that sort of thing, that they would be, helping the kids with the posters and all of those sort of things and helping them, put them up and that kind of thing, or directing them where to do it?
Ms. Rogers, if you're talking specifically about a student demonstration, we would not have a staff expectation they participate in any creation of signs.
No, not the expectation. It's prohibiting their ability, and sorry, the feedback. It's prohibiting their ability. This, as it's written, is expecting them to have a sponsor, but then prohibiting the sponsor to help them promote. And this is where, like, if you have a student who's got a poster, would they then not be able to go to their staff sponsor and say, can you look over this poster? That would be considered a promotion. So that's what I'm saying. Do we not have that for clubs, that they're involved in some sort of way in promoting? Yes.
When I read this in the draft of the policy, it's saying, if applicable, I think it speaks to
Mr. Delaney, do you want to try the microphone at the podium?
I'm sorry.
So if I'm understanding the question correctly, Ms. Rogers, you're looking at the area in F5 where it
Right.
says will be used to promote student-led demonstrations. And then what was the other area you were pointing to?
Well, it says in ED, in section E, 1D, it says that the students can have a staff sponsor, but then in 5, it says they can't, no school resources, employees, agents will be used to promote student-led demonstrations. But if they're going to be helping as a staff sponsor, they then would be involved, if they could be asked to be involved by the students, can you look over this poster? Can you help me with this? So would that not be a conflict, is what my concern is.
So the way I'm reading the policy as it's written is E is request and approval process.
Right.
And so let me just try and make sure I capture you if that's okay. So when
Yeah.
I look at that conversation around D, staff sponsor, if applicable, could be an instance where that sponsor is assisting that student in that meeting with the principal to request and get approval. When I look at school responsibilities 5, it's then saying they cannot have school resources or employee agents will be used to promote student-led demonstrations. So one is where I'm just interpreting how I read this.
Right.
Is one is the request and approval process that a student might come forward with the principal and say, my sponsor is here with me. But we would then be clear with the sponsor of they cannot use school resources and you cannot participate in that.
See, but if you look at the whole section E, it says students must meet with the principal or designee to present purpose and topic, date, time, and location, anticipated number of participants, staff sponsor, if applicable, materials to be distributed. So that staff sponsor is, according to what's written, part of date, time, location, materials to be distributed, anticipated number of participants. So I read it as staff sponsor as part of that entire kit and caboodle. Is that...
That's how you're interpreting it. I think the questions come as Dr. Green talked about. The interpretation of this would be what we would try to, coach a principal on what that looks like. You may interpret that differently than I am. The example I would give to you, for example, is the LGBTQ club, for example. Might have a sponsor that attends that meeting as this child is requesting this access. They're not there to advocate. They're not saying I'm here to support it. It's saying the word I'm looking to is if applicable. I'm certainly not the expert on how this policy is going to be interpreted from the standpoint of a legal component.
No.
Our
but
role is to
it's-
ensure our principals can execute it once it's passed.
Right, and that's where I'm saying that this seems to be confusing if it is for me. And again, I was a teacher on the ground just a couple of years ago, and so what's happening up here it has to translate in our schools. So that's why, to me, staff sponsor, if applicable, under all of those things, saying, oh, you can have a staff sponsor, yet they can't do anything to help you, what's the purpose of the staff sponsor then? Does that make sense to where my thinking is? Because I would say that if you're asking for, if you want a staff sponsor, great, the staff member is there, but they're supposed to be there to assist the children in what they're wanting to do. But that would then violate number 5. So that's what my thought process is that we are asking for a staff sponsor, but then they can't do anything. So it seems a little backwards.
It's not saying we're asking for a staff sponsor. I'm saying if applicable.
Okay.
But I'm just being clear. This is obviously shows why there's disconnect, and I don't think I'm going to convince you one way or the other, Ms. Rogers. But I just see it saying if applicable.
You're interpreting it that way, but someone else can interpret it differently. It doesn't make sense to be put here in the policy if you're saying that. To me, if applicable is if you want a staff sponsor, not. I'm sorry? Okay, no. Right. That's what I'm saying. If you want a staff sponsor, then that's fine. But then at the same time, we're saying you can't use resources so even the staff computer would be considered a resource. And if the kid wants to say, can you look at this on your computer? That's a school resource. This would tie their hands. So then they wouldn't be allowed to have a staff sponsor. Does this make sense what I'm saying? I'm going by what's written, and I was kind of asking Cammie,
Correct.
This is where I'm confused. Is that
I think what you're asking is what is the definition of promote under, this is F5?
No. F5, it says no school resources. So that
will be used to promote, school resources, employees, agents will be used to promote student-led demonstrations. You're saying this, a staff sponsor is an employee.
Right.
Now,
they're
my understanding
sponsoring all
on
of
school
this.
clubs is you do have to have an employee for safety reasons, because you're not going to let kids unattended in rooms, things, so that you have to have your school sponsor. I think over here in F5, promote is, and again, committee members may have to speak to this, but I think you're looking for the definition of the word promote. Does the school sponsor get on the microphone and say, please come to the student demonstration at 1 o'clock?
Which is different than, can you help us with our promotional materials? Can you look this over? I mean, that could be in essence considered promoting because they're helping the students promote it with their school equipment because they're the staff sponsor. Do you see what I'm saying? We have to be careful at how we're saying this. Yes, the students should be the ones putting the posters up. The students should be the ones who are saying, please come. But if we're going to have a staff sponsor, they have to be able to do sponsor work. Does that make sense? That's where my question is.
Obviously, the school sponsor is going to make sure school rules are followed, that the children are safe, that they get to the bus on time, that they, follow any rules. They're not pulling out fire extinguishers. They're not running down the hallways on there. I think what you're concerned about is F5, which is promote. What does it mean to promote? Again, I'm not school-based, so I can't say for sure what a school sponsor does, but I would think my interpretation would be that they're not the ones making the announcements. They're not the ones contacting people to come to the event for that. But if you want to offer an expanded definition, that might work.
Okay.
Right.
We're gonna move on, and if you have additional questions after everyone's had an opportunity, Mr. Cummings.
Yeah, thank you so much for reviewing this policy. I think making some good changes, shortening it. I thought the portion that was removed from the initial draft, the last portion of the initial draft, taking that out, cleaning up this, and getting to a more conducive document. I appreciate that work. And so I think my comments are going to be similar to some of my colleagues. I appreciate the clarification on B5, third party, elected officials not assigned to the host school. So it sounds like that will hopefully be amended for stronger clarification because as Ms. Rogers pointed out, as elected officials and school board members, our duties are to show up at schools regardless of assignment. So I appreciate the clarification. I think the biggest hang up that I personally continue to have is on E2 with spontaneous. And I've put a lot of thought into this. I'm going to repeat some of the things I probably said at last meeting. I would like to see this section change that spontaneous demonstrations are just subject to the student code of conduct. I think that's how Prince William, where this policy was based off of, how they phrased it. Because not allowing, I'm trying to understand, I'm struggling here because I have cases, and I mentioned Tinker versus Des Moines last time, which appeared to be spontaneous and whatnot. But I have 3 cases I reviewed from MTSU.edu. They have a First Amendment center, and so it's specifically focused on the First Amendment rights of K-12 students. And so first and foremost, Chandler versus, and I'll apologize as I'm not a lawyer, so I can't say all these names, right? But Chandler versus McMinnville School District, 9th Circuit in 1992. Students wore buttons to support a teacher strike. The buttons said, "No scabs." Admin deemed it as disruptive. Court said they were allowed to wear those buttons. So here we see an example of a of collective action. We see it in instructional time. And my hypothesis in my gut says they didn't go through a approval process that is somewhat spontaneous, meaning, we planned this on our own accord and decided to show up and just go for it. And court said, hey, this is protected speech. You're allowed to do it. Next, we'll jump to 2004, Holloman versus Harlan. During instructional time, students raised their fists during the Pledge of Allegiance. Initially, that was deemed disruptive. Court said they have the right to do that. So once again, we see collective action. Based on what I read, I did not see any approval process or anything like that, so I could see somewhat being spontaneous. Then we'll jump to 1966, Bernstein versus Byers, 5th Circuit. Controversy arose when at the all-black Booker T. Washington School in Philadelphia, Mississippi, began wearing freedom buttons provided by the Council of Federated Organizations. Many of these buttons proclaim one man, one vote, and protested racial discrimination in voting and other aspects of public life. The high school principal banned the buttons, saying it had no relevance to the students' education and would cause commotion. And so students were eventually told that they were allowed to wear the buttons. And so I cite these 3 examples because I don't know how we can get to a conclusion that says this policy does not allow spontaneous demonstrations when we can't really, I just don't see any evidence from court cases where it says that we have the ability to prohibit such behavior as long as it's not disruptive. Now, I recognize the First Amendment issues are always going to be muddy and whatnot, but I think if we are going to have a policy, I think changing and amending E2 to just saying that spontaneous demonstrations are subject to our student code of conduct or something in that similar phrasing would be more in line with what I would see within these cases because, our students' rights matters, and that's what the courts always keep saying. Our students have a voice, regardless of whether or not, my agreement, my concurrent, my thoughts on the issue. I think when our students utilize their First Amendment rights for something that they're passionate about, for something that they feel purpose towards, it is an academic learning opportunity. They learn about the Constitution. They learn how do I formulate an idea, how do I bring social change. And so I think just making this policy reflective of settled litigation is important. So that is my feedback. I don't know how we can say we don't allow or prohibit based on just those 3, and we can just go to the First Amendment.mtsu.edu and find even more examples of what they went through. But I really struggle as someone in charge of policy limiting, potentially advancing policy that would limit our students' constitutional rights. And it's messy, I get it. And it's going to take dialogue and it's going to take community, but I tend to lean into allowing our students their freedom to express when it's non-disruptive to the academic experience.
Vice Chair Weems. You already spoke? Oh, okay. Mr. Culpepper?
Mr. Brownstone.
Oh, Mr. Bowensteel, did you take yourself out?
Chair Brown, Mr. Culpepper was first, and then it was Mr. Bowensteel.
Oh, sorry about that. I thought he was ahead of me. I was sitting here taking my time. I guess I'll start with, my colleague previously pointed out that this policy has been revised, and one time it was revised 3 years in a row. Another time it was revised in response to something that happened somewhere else in the country. It's a variety of things, obviously, that brings policies to our attention and make us decide that changes need to be made. In this case, I think it was discomfort with people other than students participating in a demonstration. And it's perfectly reasonable for us to put limitations on that. The first change that we talked about here earlier today was the change the definition of student-led, which means planned, organized, and carried out only by students. And I think you put teachers in a very uncomfortable position, well, some teachers anyhow, when you ask them to help plan these kinds of events. And in response to one of my other colleagues' questions here, I think that when you're talking about the sponsor, it's under the section related to planning and approval. And I think it's perfectly reasonable to ask a teacher to help you through, who's going to sponsor, to help you through liaison with the principal and the approval process to get it done without stepping into promoting a demonstration. Big picture for me is, I agree with something a speaker said earlier, which is it's not the purpose of schools. It's not Virginia Beach City protest school. That's not the purpose of our schools. Our schools are here to educate our children. And this detracts from that, and it not only detracts from it from the people who participate in demonstrations, but detracts from it for other people who are trying to sit in class and learn. Now, despite that fact, we are bringing up a policy here which allows for it, a time and place. It allows for it in an appropriate time and place, because nonetheless, despite the fact that our primary purpose is something else, it is important that students have an opportunity to speak and have an opportunity to express their First Amendment rights. And this policy lays out that for our students in a manner that's acceptable for all involved, maximizes learning time, and minimizes impact of people not participating.
Mr. Bowensteel?
Thank you. First of all, there's nothing in this policy that says we're taking away any voice of the students. We're actually encouraging it. I'm in favor of not having elected officials at these events. I'm not, in any way. So I'm standing firm on that. And to me, where we're having this staff sponsored, I figured that out. So it can't be that difficult. They're just there to help them put their presentation on. That's all it says, that they can have someone there to help them with their presentation, because chances are they probably have never even been in that situation. And that's, different than the promoting. Also, the spontaneous part, that could come into the code of conduct. It also creates a lot of safety issues. If they have one lunch, they have the whole time during one lunch to get together and do what they want to do. It's not interfering with their instructional time if they want to pray or whatever they want to do. But if they're waiting till the time comes to go back to class and then they're interfering with our instructional time, you're talking to a few people who are disrupting our students, their learning ability, and creating safety problems for our security, our teachers, and the administration. And that's all I got to say at this point. I'll circle back.
Ms. Dwyer, then Ms. Rogers.
So I'm going to echo some of my colleagues that spoke, and I'm going to respond to a couple of the others.
Please make sure that you don't direct your comments at any board members specifically and direct them.
Yeah, I said colleagues.
Thank you. Just making sure.
I had a constituent reach out to me and express concerns, safety, disruption, school time. I'm just pointing out what their concerns were. Parent involvement, minors involved, wanting advance notice of when these are so they can be there, and also so they can pull their student out in case they don't want them there because of potential what could happen. To say that all students are good, well, that's really idealistic. Some students are triggered, and we have to deal with that. It's a reality check. And I think also, and it's not that we don't want to support our students, we do. And I'm sitting here, and we've spent a lot of time on this. I wish we would spend more time on academics. But anyway, here we are. And another thing that this constituent pointed out to me, which I thought was really interesting, and I'm sure nobody's thought of, is what about the students that don't want to protest at all? And they have friends on both sides of the aisle. How does that make them feel? That really puts them in an awkward place. So it is something to think about. We're sitting here talking about some students' rights while other students' rights are on the line, and it puts them in a very awkward position.
Chair Brown, please add Kim Melnick to the queue after Ms. Rogers.
All right, Ms. Rogers.
Thank you. So I have a couple of things to state. First of all, it's been mentioned that this is a disruption to learning. But as a educator of early childhood students, the most powerful learning any student can have is hands-on learning. The most powerful thing a student can do is experience a lesson, and demonstrations are a hands-on lesson in civics. It is students' First Amendment right to participate in a demonstration, whether you agree with what they're demonstrating or not. We have the right to demonstrate, and a school is the perfect setting to teach students the proper way to demonstrate, that you don't beget violence, that you don't make a giant mess. You have something to say, and you want everyone to see it. We are teaching students how to do it the right way, so you don't have a big violent mess on your hands because they've never learned how to demonstrate appropriately. So to say that this isn't educational, I think is incorrect, to be honest, because hands-on learning is the best way for students to learn. Second of all, I want to state that I submitted my suggestions, and I am available to any of my colleagues at any time so that we don't have to have these discussions on the dais. If anyone wants to reach out and talk about these things, I think it's about time that we all start reaching out to each other. This isn't happening at all amongst ourselves. We don't reach out to each other and say, hey, we did these things. Do you want to look at it again? And if you have any other suggestions that maybe we can talk about or whatever, this is not happening. So to be frustrated that there's a lot of time being taken because it's not being taken off the dais. This is the only time that we are given a voice. And so if you want our voices to not be only heard on the dais, give us a ring. Every single one of my colleagues on here that I talk to on a regular basis are more than willing to discuss their concerns with any of our colleagues at any point. And I think that if we want to talk about taking up too much time during the meetings, then maybe we need to have off-meeting conversations about how to make these things go more smoothly so that we can actually get our jobs done better. I maintain the fact that we need to exempt school board members from number 5 because that is our absolute responsibility per state code. Thank you.
Ms. Melnick.
Thank you, Chair Brown. I'm like pulling all my hair out here. It's just not on camera. We are sending the wrong message to the public. Nothing has happened with student-led protests in our schools. Nobody's doing anything wrong, and student-led protests have always had principal approval. Please stop going off topic and making it seem like we've got a mess going on in our schools and our principals can't handle this. Nothing is happening. This was a former school board member who is angry at Mrs. Rogers. That's why we're here. Missing the logic is maddening. Like, stop. Mrs. Rogers is right. We're not having these conversations. Information is not being shared appropriately, and conversations are not happening. And sometimes elected officials need to have offline conversations so that we can understand these things instead of confusing the public. Kids are good, and they've always followed the rules with these protests. They have. And now we're in the weeds. We are so deep in the weeds that we can't see out of this mess. There was nothing wrong with the policy from 2024. It was brought up because Mrs. Rogers showed up in a Moms Demand Action t-shirt. That's it. We as adults could have dealt with that instead of turning this into telling kids that they're bad and that they're doing things wrong. They're not. And I ask that you guys stop and you rethink this whole thing. There's nothing wrong. And students, Mr. Cummings is right. They have rights. They do have rights. Whether we like it or not, they do. And I like it. But I'm just saying, this is enough. And I'm asking people to stop and to regroup before we have to vote on this. This is very, very unfair to the public.
Ms. Felton.
Thank you, Chair Brown. And I appreciate all of my colleagues' comments. I really do. I think that is the purpose of the PRC, to put together these policies and bring them before you so that you can talk about them. I appreciate Dr. Green's little hypothetical that she gave as well. But if fact be known, I am an at-large school board member. I have no assigned schools. So that means that I can go to all of the schools. And it is my intent to try to serve as many as I can. When this policy first came forth, I asked the question, if the policy was updated in 2024, why has it come before us again, and what was the problem? And it was said that when our colleagues saw something wrong with it they wanted to see done. The name was not given to me at first, who the colleague was, but I don't want to prolong it as well. If I don't believe in anything else in this student-led, let's say it again, the student-led demonstration, I believe in A. And I believe in what it says about the First Amendment. I have had conversation with students because this is about the students. Someone panicked because I talked to some students, but they walk up on me, and yeah, I'm going to have a conversation with them. I am not going to turn them away. And they gave me their ideologies of what it should look like. We need procedures in the schools. The students need them as well. We are the adults in the room. I'm hoping that we are the adults in the room. And some of this that we are talking about has gone so far-fetched out. If this is a student-led demonstration, it's about students, why are the adults trying to take it over and not give them a voice? That's all I'm saying. I do have a concern about elected official in that particular, in 5B definition, elected officials. And it really gives no definition because if Senator Rouse or Senator Keegan or Senator whoever, they are elected officials. Is that who we're talking about? I see nowhere where it says specifically school board members. I don't read that in that. So maybe that should be cleared up, what you're talking about when you say elected officials. When these last changes came to the PRC review, I was told that some changes had been made and that I would have the opportunity to look at them before it got to the PRC. I said fair, because I feel that all school board members should have an input, whoever we talk to. And I called them and I said, give me some input concerning this. And I felt that was fair. But I did not get the changes until I got to the meeting. And I felt that it was unfair to the students to move on that because I hadn't had a chance to read or be objective about it. In our first meeting, in one of our meetings concerning this policy, 5-40, I remember Chair Weems saying that this policy is too important just to skip over it in any kind of way. And I agree, because it's dealing with the students. And changes move with swift transition. Changes are happening every day, especially this year, in this time with students, and they're becoming more aware, looking at TV, looking at what's happening, and they want their rights to be heard. They want their rights to do what we're going to do. So I set out looking at this policy, focusing on our students and giving them procedures how to move forward. Didn't do it on my own. Talked to some principals as well. How will this benefit you as being the manager of your school? What language can we use? So I tried and put all that in. But I just want to say that I felt a little bit taken aback when I got to the meeting and we had these procedures already ready to go inside of the policy. Did not have a chance to do it. Now, after the meeting, I did. I've had some time to look over it as well. I am the PRC. I am one of the committee members. And I think that we should stick with it. When you got something to come forward, and I would suggest to all of my colleagues, if you have a problem with what we're getting here, let us know and write it up. Write up what you think we should put in there. You have that choice. And we will look over it and do it again and make sure that it's explanatory so that we all can understand it. We all know what it's all about. But I don't think, in my mind's eye, and I will say this to you now, it was not my objective, never has been, that school board members do not attend. We attend everything else. That was not my objective, to keep you, because you are elected, and your student asks you to come to some of these things as well. But we don't go to disrupt. And when we look at sponsors, I feel like a sponsor over something is just to guide the students, not have a lot of hand on, but you guiding them with the policy. The policy said you can do this, this, and this. The students need procedures. And if we don't give them corrected procedure, it can affect academics in the school. It can. And we're trying to be transparent. That's why we have policy. Transparency allows you to know what's happening in your school. Thank you.
Vice Chair Weems.
Yes, just to clarify, actually, this was brought up, I don't even know how many weeks and weeks and weeks or months we've had this policy. LB, do you remember? But it was actually brought to our attention by an administrator, a school board member, and a constituent. And it originated from some confusion about a guest speaker, and that's when, if my policy review committee members remembered, we separated two policies, assemblies and student-led demonstrations, and then we named it student-led because of that. So this has been a long process that came from multiple people. And as far as the information, when you're working on committees and you have an agenda, and correct me if I'm wrong, Ms. Linetti, but you can't just add or change agendas unless you do so and notify the public. And so when you get information, sometimes you do bring it to the committee meeting, and that's when you discuss it. For example, Ms. Felton, the meeting before our last meeting, she brought several changes, and Mr. Bowensteel and I had not looked at them until the meeting because she had gained that information from students. And we had not seen them at all until the meeting, and she brought those changes, and we actually put several of the changes in there because we agreed with them. I made some changes after hearing my constituents the week before, and I too took it to the meeting, and we had ample time to go through every single line and discuss it. So sometimes that happens when we get information late, or when you just can't change the agenda because of the public at the last minute. So that's what committees are for. As far as elected officials attending, I think, I understand the state code, and it is our job to make sure things are carried out. But Ms. Linetti, there's some places on school property that I can't go just because I can't pop in an IEP meeting, I hope. I can't go to a discipline, so there's places that I am not allowed to go, even though I'm an elected school board member. Is that correct?
You did not have unfettered ability to just walk into
okay.
certain types of meetings.
Okay, and again, this is it's for the students. We are not taking away students' rights to demonstrate. That has been set up here, and that's just false. We are not taking away. We are putting practice into policy. So I hope, Chair, that we can move forward, and if someone wants to next week make a substitute motion, please feel free, because this is the committee's recommendation. We talk about it, and then in 2 weeks we vote. And so that's the process, and hopefully we'll move forward with that. Thank you so much.
Okay, so we're going to do Ms. Melnick, but before we do that, I am going to say that if you have had the opportunity to speak, I think everybody's heard everybody's thoughts, and so we'll move on after that. Ms. Melnick.
Thank you for this last time to speak. Just two things. First, it was not the committee's recommendation unanimously, so it was 2-1, and so I think that's why this conversation is very important. Second, there was also mention of elected officials in the schools, and we all know what happened last year. That's a totally separate issue that I believe has been resolved, and it was resolved by administration stepping in and clarifying some things when elected officials are going to visit our schools, and supposedly there's something about permission slips. And so I'm not going to get into this now, but my question is, recently we have had elected officials in some of our school buildings, and my question is, are those permission slips going home so that parents know and that their students can participate with things with elected officials in our schools? And this is what I'm talking about with the leads. And so that's going to be a whole nother issue, because permission slips were required for some. Are they being required for all, especially with all of this supposedly being taken care of behind the scenes? So I'm going to ask that to be brought up at the next policy review. And if it's something that Dr. Robertson did, I would like clarification on that. Thank you so much.
Okay. I've waited to listen to all of my colleagues' thoughts, and of course, this will be on at our next board meeting. But I do have a couple of questions, and I hope that maybe somebody on staff can answer this. Would you consider a student-led protest to be a class or a program? Class or program? Is it a class or a program, or is it neither?
My first response is neither.
Okay, all right, thank you. That's all I wanted to know. And the reason that I ask this is because our bylaws, our school board bylaws, which requires 7 votes, not 6, bylaw 126, says that the purpose of school board members visiting schools is for classrooms or programs, and this is not a classroom nor a program. It is a student-led protest or assembly, and so demonstration. And I wanted to make sure that I mentioned that. The policy affirms that students have the freedom and the right to assemble, and we want them to have the freedom and the rights to assemble. I feel like there is a lot of rhetoric right now surrounding the policy, how the policy came about. I don't know some of the statements to be entirely accurate, but nonetheless, I think the policy makes one thing clear, and it's the same thing that's been clear all along. Student-led protests and demonstrations are for students. I think the policy is reaffirming the constitutional rights of our students, and with those rights come long-standing time, place, and manner rules. This is a school building. Its primary purpose is student education. I don't 100% entirely agree that it is our school division's role to teach students how to protest, but I think if we were doing that level of teaching, that telling our students how to make sure you don't get in trouble the way that we have, as another colleague has mentioned, in this by outlining the process into the policy and what the expectations are is the best way to do that. And every student has that freedom to do a demonstration. They will continue to have that freedom. But at the same time, every student deserves the freedom to learn without disruption. And every student deserves to feel as though their safety is protected. I strongly do support not having elected officials participate in student-led demonstrations. And that's because I don't think any adult, directly or indirectly, should be pushing adult political viewpoints onto students during the school day. I've spoken to constituents in my district, and they are across the political spectrum. And the belief that protests during the school day should have reasonable limits to protect academics has transcended party lines. I want to be pragmatic, practical, and grounded. This policy does that, I feel, by balancing student rights with our responsibility to education. With that, we are going to move on to policy 554.
Policy 554 is your restraint and seclusion policy. Remember, you currently have a regulation that deals with this, and we decided that we would move this into an actual policy and create a regulation to support it. You sent it back to us in PRC to look at. The only change that we have made is the very first sentence, and it now reads, dedicated seclusion rooms are not authorized in Virginia Beach City Public School buildings, which also applies to contractors using Virginia Beach City Public School buildings. Those are the only changes we made. Now remember, restraint and seclusion, the law allows you can completely prohibit restraint and seclusion, you can allow restraint and seclusion or anything in between here. After some discussion, it was decided the main concern was those rooms that have nothing in them, they're just used for seclusion, and there are only two locations that we have them, they're in specialized programs. And so we thought, PSC looking at this by saying a dedicated seclusion room would remove the use of those. And I remind you, if you do look at some of the other rules and regulations on this, if we have a situation where a child is out of control, dangerous, or getting hurt, we still have the ability to take the child and isolate the child in there because that's a special circumstance. So that will still be allowed. What we aren't going to have is rooms that are used for nothing but seclusion. So we will just have to find other methods by which to deal with those students who may have previously been using them. But again, this was not widespread. It was only two specialized programs with very high specialized need children, and we're just going to eliminate those rooms from use, and they will then have to find another method to deal with the children's issues that led to using the seclusion rooms.
And I just want to mention to our colleagues this paper that was handed out, the highlighted part, even though the changed part was in the packet, this highlighted portion is the changed portion, just so you're aware. Anyway, I don't see any questions. Are there any hands raised?
Ms. Melnick has her hand raised.
Okay, Ms. Melnick?
Thank you, Chair Brown. I just would like to ask my colleagues to please visit CSEP, not to look at a seclusion room, but to actually visit the program, talk to CSEP administration, and I would really like an answer to Mrs. Linetti, not tonight, but to Mrs. Linetti's comment, which is, what is going to happen with students if a seclusion room cannot be used? Because we're talking about students with a lot of needs. And I'm not saying that I agree with seclusion rooms. What I'm saying is, what happens if a student is throwing desks or chairs across a classroom? What happens and what does a teacher do in response to that? Are we going to get to the point where we're asking parents to come pick children up? Might there be an occasion where the police have to be called? What do we do if there are injuries that resulted from not being able to take another step? Again, I'm not saying that I'm in favor of seclusion rooms as much as I am in favor of having answers to these questions. As specifically for CSEP, because that's a different program, and I just really would like the answers to those questions before there's a vote. I was not a special education teacher. I don't know who on the dais was, and I do think it's important to visit a program who will be affected by our policy, because we didn't just say VBCPS schools. This will affect CSEP, so I just need the answers to those questions, and I appreciate you. Thank you.
Dr. Robertson, is there anyone here that can speak to that? No.
Well, yeah. We're prepared from a training perspective to proceed no matter what the board decides to do around policy. We'll adjust the regulations and then we'll provide clarity to staff. Staff are human beings. And with that, you're going to get variability on how staff A may react to the same situation that staff B may react completely differently. And so I don't think there's any method we can guarantee how every staff member, we have 5,000 of them, are going to respond, but we will provide training. We're poised to do that as soon as you guys decide how you want to proceed.
Thanks. Do you think Dr. Ronnie Myers-Dobb could answer some of Ms. Melnick's questions? Are you able to?
Well, who better, right?
Right.
But I don't want to put her on the spot. But yeah, Dr. Myers-Dobb, do you want to come up?
I think the first thing we have to remember is that seclusion is prohibited in another division who is a part of the regional programs. So CSEP has worked around this in Norfolk. But if you have a child who is imminent risk of physical harm to themselves or to others, then that is when you're going to look at the use of restraint. So if you don't have the option of seclusion, and any prevention or intervention strategies had not worked, then at that point, if there's imminent risk and it's a safety issue, they would move to restrain the student.
Ms. Melnick, does that answer your question?
Well, maybe for the public, if we could have a definition of restraint. What does that mean and what does that include?
I mean, it's when you physically intervene when there's imminent risk of physical harm. And, CSEP uses a program just like we use a program. And, depending on the program, the restraints may look different. But it's an intervention, it's a hold.
Can we get, before the next meeting, do you think you could send us the definition of restraint legally? Yeah. Okay. All right.
It is.
It is in here.
Mhm.
Okay.
But you have.
It's in the regulation.
Correct. You have the policy. We've given you the regulation before. It is in the regulation.
Okay.
And that mirrors state law.
Since it's been a little bit since we got that at our meeting, I think it'd be useful if that could be sent to the board again.
Okay, and for the record, I did drop off my materials from my regional CSEP board meeting, and in those documents are in that packet is also the documents that have to be filled out by anyone who uses restraint or seclusion, and so it's in the back of the. Well, you'll see. It's a booklet that I left for everybody to review.
All right, thank you. Ms. Rogers?
Dr. Robertson, how many seclusion rooms do we currently have?
So we have 3 at Renaissance and 2 at Windsor Wood, is that correct?
So 5 total?
I believe we have 5 in
Okay.
two locations.
And what happens, because we have 86 schools, am I right?
85 now.
85, okay. Just trying to get the numbers right. So we have 85 schools, 5 seclusion rooms. So what happens at the other schools that don't have a seclusion room?
Yeah, so primarily seclusion is used in the elementary school level where kids are unable to modify their own behaviors and if they're having a moment, so to speak, it's more prevalent to use a seclusion room. We would then use restraint.
Right, but I'm saying we have, I think, 56 elementary schools?
That's correct, we do
And we
not.
do not have 56 seclusion rooms.
That's correct.
So my point is, we do have a plan in place for those students. As a teacher who had a student who had a very difficult time controlling themselves through furniture, eloped, all of the things, there was a plan in place to handle those students, sans the seclusion room that was not at my school.
That's correct.
Okay, and so I just wanted to make that point, that we do have 56 elementary schools, 85 schools in total, and only 5 seclusion rooms. So we're eliminating the seclusion rooms at 5 rooms, 2 locations. Now, granted, it is 2 locations that specialize in dealing with high behavior students. However, there are behaviors across the division that are very, very, very difficult to deal with, specifically and especially when you're talking about students who have not been diagnosed with a special education need that clearly cannot be in a general education setting. We still are able to have procedures in place to safely get that child out of the building if necessary, so that we can continue the learning environment. And that's all I wanted to make a point of.
Mr. Cummings?
Yeah, so I feel like my questions and comments, I'm just trying to understand and wrap my head around this topic often. First and foremost, I think we had our community partner come and share with, a recommendation to get rid of seclusion. And then, that recommendation was and I'm paraphrasing, so I apologize if my words are somewhat off, but then the second recommendation was prohibiting the use in elementary schools. So I do, and then I hear, there are pathways forward and examples in cities on how they utilize, this population of students. So, I heard the mention of Norfolk schools, and I know that there's other schools and states, states as well that prohibit the use of seclusion. So I feel like there's pathways forward for us as a division, because this is it's a heavy topic. There's been bipartisan legislation written before about, I think it's the Save Children Act. I don't think it passed, but there was a strong bipartisan support to see the end of seclusion, and I think it is a heavy topic. And I think that from what I've read on the articles that I sought out, there are new interventions, new ways for us to interact, and so I would also, I think, if I hear Ms. Melnick's question in heart, I feel like having a deeper dive into, and I know that we've put this off, and I apologize, but I feel like if we can add an information session before we vote on it, would be helpful maybe to better understand with examples, with more numbers, what does seclusion look like within Virginia Beach schools? What does restraint look like? Like, do we practice mechanical restraint? Are we just talking about hugging a kid? Are we talking about, like, what are we talking about?
So the regulation spells out
Yeah.
the use of restraint. It talks about the types of restraints that we do not use. We do
Mm.
not use pharmaceutical restraints. We do not use mechanical restraints.
Mm.
So that is clear. A presentation would simply be, we would walk you through the regulation and talk about the training we provide to all staff in the use of restraint, because general education teachers, security assistants have to break up a fight. They need to know how to safely restrain a student that doesn't cause harm, and it also protects themselves. So we have that information now, but really you could probably get a pretty good description through the look at the regulation.
And I think also just, I'm trying to think how to word my question. I think from the presentation way back when ago, when it talked about us having 300 incidents of seclusion, my understanding was that predominantly those incidents were at those two locations. And so, am I recalling that information correctly?
Dr. Myers, that was like a handful of students that represented the vast majority of those, correct?
Yes.
I
And
can
I mean,
remember if she doesn't.
looking at numbers from this year up through January, there were 96 incidents of seclusion at CSEP, and it was 22 students. So it was 96 incidents, but it involved 22 students. So that's an example, just like those numbers last year. I don't have those numbers with me, but when you look at the numbers this year, that's how it works out.
In last year's, because I just recently looked at it, that they used when they brought the recommendation was 271 for 44 students. So. Do you have any additional questions?
I mean, so I guess my question is, if we get rid of seclusion rooms, does that mean that we stop practicing seclusion?
No, if you read the regulation, you still, and this is where it gets complicated. You'll see right here in the policy, those times when you can use seclusion, and it's going to be prevent a student from inflicting serious harm or injury, to quell a disturbance, remove the student from a scene of disturbance where the behavior is causing property damage to others, defending self. We can still use it. And these are what I'm going to call basically emergency circumstances on there. So that's where we're going to, even when you do use seclusion, and you don't see it here in this policy, but if you look at your current regulation, 559.1, which talks about disturbance, it's spelled out there, and that's what your current regulation, the regulation that will follow 554.1 looks like. It very strict rules on what you have to do, the conditions of the room, how long they can be there, who's got to be there, the ventilation, everything's, all that spelled out. And we have had that in place for probably within 2013. We've been following these rules all along. So even when you use seclusion, there's very strict rules about the time period. As Mrs. Melnick mentioned, there are forms that have to be filled out, following procedures. So we've been following these procedures on there. So we do use seclusion when it's necessary on there. What the concern that seemed to be coming from the PRC was those rooms that are very, very isolated. There's nothing else in them that there was a concern about. So if you need to use seclusion, because that's how you're going to calm the child or deal with the situation, you can if you follow the policy and regulation.
I think I'm about to say I'll probably have some follow-up questions just over email. I think that'd probably be best, so.
Vice Chair Weems?
Yes, and I was going to say, and this kind of goes off what you were saying, my colleague was saying, was the PRC decided not to say no seclusion for that reason, because we realized that this is not a special education policy. This is a policy for all students, first of all. And sometimes I think we forget that and the public forgets that. But if you have a fight and you have to put one person in the office or something, you have secluded that person. So this doesn't do anything about, seclusion. Or if you have a classroom and someone is throwing tables and chairs, the teacher may have to get all the students out in the hallway. That is seclusion. So this does not get rid of seclusion. What this does is our two places where the dedicated seclusion rooms are, that we will not use those as a school system. I was on the CSEP board, but since this policy came up, I went and visited. But I think what our committee and my colleagues can step in if they think differently. But I think when we asked, I asked a question to Ronnie about what are other places doing specifically, because we contract not just to CSEP, but other places, correct? And so, and I don't know if you want to name them, but some of our students, and this is, the seclusion rooms are at places where the challenging behavior, the program there is more challenging at these 2 locations. That's why we don't have seclusion rooms at all 85 schools. They are placed strategically. But we've got a couple other locations that we contract out. And Ronnie, would you just?
You're talking about the private day schools?
Yeah, the private, where some of our more challenging students. And so we specifically ask what they are doing as far as seclusion rooms, and
They do not utilize seclusion.
and neither one of them have seclusion rooms, and they deal with even much more challenging. And so that kind of what, helped us as well, I think. So again, this policy just says we won't use those 2 rooms at those 2 school locations. And then I trust, and we asked Ronnie several questions about training, and I feel very confident that our teachers will be trained what to do, and there are plans already in place. But this was a very it's a complicated issue because we want to look at the safety of our teachers as well as the safety of our students, as well as what the students' parents want. So it was very complicated. We spent a lot of time on this one as well. But I think that I'm very pleased with what we came up with. Thank you.
Ms. Dwyer?
So can I conclude that we did get feedback from our teachers? Is that?
I know we spoke to the school administration about it too, or running these programs on there. I do know, and you've seen this, we've certainly had personnel cases. We have personnel that get charged with child protective services, assault cases when they didn't actually do anything wrong. So we've seen that worry, we've had that worry about. So we do know that we have employees that are very concerned about how to handle a student. So there are times when a seclusion room seclusion might be better than putting your hands on and risking getting hurt. So that was one of the concerns. We want to protect our students. We don't want people to get hurt. We don't want our employees to get hurt. We want to solve the problem there. So we want to be able to do that. And this seemed to be the better solution. And if you look at the policy, and this is by state regulation, we do have to review every year. So this, I thought, was a very good compromise. Let's try this. We're not going to use these total isolated rooms. We're going to obviously, I think we've all looked and realized we need to pay more attention to these figures. What is going on here? So we're going to try it where we don't have these rooms. And those students, and you can see it's a pretty small number of students that account for most of these situations. Let's see what happens this year. What can we do differently? We're hearing other school divisions and private schools are able to manage this. We'll try. If this does not work out, we will obviously need to come back to you. So I do know we're aware of staff and student concerns. We're aware of parent concerns. We've heard from SEAC, who's obviously heard some of the concerns about it. So we're trying to find the best circumstances to provide a safe environment where everybody can stay and be educated.
Okay. I'd like to go along with her recommendation as well, considering, she's already hands-on and been there, done that, and experienced. So, it's easy for us, I think it's easier for us, but I definitely want to hear feedback.
Okay, so I do serve as the liaison for the Special Education Advisory Committee, and this policy recommendation does come forward after a lot of conversation, for the community and everybody that's here. This isn't an easy conversation to have because you have to make sure students are protected and staff are protected, and parents have to feel comfortable sending their kids to school too. So, they made that recommendation, and I did have some conversations with some folks on that committee, and I did express to them, some of the concerns, one of them being well, this isn't a policy just for special education students. And at the heart of it was the request for the room, the dedicated space. So at that meeting, they came back and asked us to compromise and remove that dedicated seclusion room in the elementary school at Windsor Woods, CSEP. This is not in a Virginia Beach program. It's in a third-party contracted, right? So it's not something that we have, that we utilize in our Virginia Beach schools, but it's within the walls of it, still in a contracted program under CSEP. And so I just, without, asserting my opinion on how this came about, why we're having this conversation, and I mean, these conversations have been going on about the seclusion spaces, this policy, the PRC. I appreciate all of the PRC's work on it. This has been back at the PRC a lot since the summer, I think June. So this has been a really, really long process. I would be remiss if I did not indicate that, I recognize some of what Ms. Melnick mentioned as potential concerns and what do you do otherwise. And I've had a lot of thoughts and processed a lot of emotions related to this. I did visit the Windsor Woods CSEP building as well. And I think that my final emotions kind of land on, I feel like we owe it to our students and our families to put forth the effort to try to do something different. And if we find that there are unintended consequences, then we will need to manage those. But I do think that we owe it to the students and families to try to find a different way, especially since there's other entire states that are, there's other school divisions that are. And so I recognize the questions, and I think there are a lot of them, and I think that that's very fair. But those are my thoughts. Dr. Robertson, did you have something to add?
Yeah, just two thoughts. One, an appreciation to the board for the months of consideration you've given this topic, and then two, context. We have 64,000 students that attend Virginia Beach City Public Schools every day, 64,000. And Ms. Chair Brown a moment ago mentioned 44 students who where seclusion was used last year out of 64,000. And then Dr. Myers-Dobb mentioned 22 students in the first semester out of 64,000. I think it's important that everybody understands context.
Thank you. We are now on to textbook adoption, secondary mathematics textbooks for high school, and we welcome Thomas Quinn, Executive Director of Secondary Teaching and Learning, who will be presenting the secondary mathematics textbook for high school and middle school, along with AP Human Geography and AP US History.
All right, thank you. Good evening. Chair Brown, Vice Chair Weems, members of the school board, Dr. Robertson. As stated, I am Tom Quinn, Executive Director of Secondary Teaching and Learning. With me are the secondary math and social studies teams. This evening, we will present textbook adoption recommendations for both math and social studies as described, and courses up for adoption for the textbook have been listed on the slide. Yep, making sure that's there. Listed on this opening slide, and we'll give you a brief moment to review them. Before we continue, I want to take time to thank the teachers, coaches, parent, post-secondary professors, special education coordinators, and students who supported the committee work across both content areas this past year. So our adoption process began at the end of last school year when a committee was formed and their work commenced in the June of 2025. The committee initiated their review examining all textbooks submitted through our RFP process. After a comprehensive review, the committee provided their top 2 recommendations, and these choices were placed on display for public comment this past fall. After the public comment period expired, the Department of Teaching and Learning and the Textbook Committee reviewed all stakeholder feedback, revisited the top 2 selections and will now provide a recommendation to the board. The first series of textbook addresses the needs for middle school math content areas across grades 6 through 8. This includes both core and advanced math at each grade level, but does not include high school credit courses such as algebra and geometry, even though they are offered at the middle school level. Those options will be covered separately. The top 2 choices of the committee were MathSpace and Savas, with MathSpace earning the top recommendation. The cost is based on current enrollment and includes a digital bundle and class sets of textbooks. Teachers of record for these courses would receive a class set of 35, and the contract duration for this textbook is 5 years. In the next slide, we will provide the rationale for the top selection. As seen on this slide, MathSpace provided stronger alignment to the 2023 standards. MathSpace was also able to offer customized textbooks that separated the curriculum between Math 6 and Advanced Math 6, Math 7 and Advanced Math 7, and Pre-Algebra and Math 8 to provide a more targeted and organized approach to supporting instruction. The committee's feedback centered around the alignment to the standards, strong assessment resources, rich mathematical tasks that prioritize discussion, collaboration, and problem solving, videos and examples to support learning in and beyond the classroom, and offline capabilities for students outside of class as needed. I'll give you a moment to review the remaining rationale provided. On this slide, you will see the top 2 selections for Algebra 1, Geometry, Algebra, Functions, and Data Analysis, also known as AFDA, and Algebra 2. In reviewing these selections, MathSpace again was selected as the top recommendation. These cost projections are based around current enrollment, a 5-year contract, and also include class sets of 35 for middle school and 30 for high school. The rationale for the recommendation are also addressed on the next slide. As with the Math 6 through 8 recommendations, MathSpace provided stronger alignment to the 2023 standards. With ease of integration with ClassLink and vast resources to support teachers, students, and parents, MathSpace earned the nod from the committee over the second choice from Savas. It's also worth noting that only MathSpace had developed a textbook for our AFDA course, something the second choice Savas was unable to offer. This book also provides offline capabilities to support all students. And again, I'll give you a moment to review the rationale displayed on the slide. Here we examine the 2 options for AP Calculus. In this scenario, the committee selected Calculus for the AP course 4th edition from Bedford, Freeman, and Worth Publishers. This adoption is also on a 5-year cycle with projections based on current enrollment, includes a class of 30 for each high school teacher. And on the next slide, review the rationale behind the committee's selection. The committee highlights the strong alignment to College Board objectives and promotion of the Future Ready profile. Beyond examples that walk students through problem solving, this textbook excelled in providing students with real-world contextual situations, offering them the chance to make connections across mathematical concepts. Provides teachers support through diagnostics, suggestions to promote academic discourse around rigorous topics, and extensive test preparation for both the AP Calculus AB and BC exams. This book also possesses offline capabilities to support all students, and I'll continue to give you a moment to read the remaining rationale on the slide. We'll now transition to secondary social studies adoptions for AP U.S. History and AP Human Geography. Much like the math process, social studies followed the same division-wide review and committee structure to ensure alignment and capture teacher voice, student needs, and feedback from all stakeholders. Our social studies team led the committee with a focus on resources, alignment to the College Board framework, and structural supports for teachers, and high-quality materials that engage students in rigorous, inquiry-based learning, as well as offline capabilities. As mentioned in the previous slide, the team began the textbook process at the end of the last school year and followed the process shown here. This approach has allowed our department to honor the work of our committees, maintain consistency across content areas, gather meaningful input from external and internal stakeholders, and allow our department to make the best decision for both teachers and students. Here we examine the top 2 choices for AP US History and their cost projection. For this course, the committee selected Fabric of a Nation 2nd edition for the projected 1,050 students enrolled. Projections are shown based on current enrollment and factor in class sets of 15 for each high school teacher, and this adoption is on a 7-year cycle. And on the next slide, we'll review the rationale behind the committee's selection. The committee's rationale behind the recommendations is as follows. Led by a strong alignment to the College Board objectives, the committee commented on the visual quality of the textbook and how the resources included exceeded all other options reviewed. Primary resources were integrated, included suggestions for differentiation of instruction, provided activities designed to support student learning across the curriculum through an inquiry-driven approach and alignment with the Future Ready profile. Teachers highlighted the skills workshop sections and practice assessments that mimic the College Board format and prepare students for the AP exam. Students also highlighted the readability of the book and opportunity for feedback provided by a few sites. The digital platform integrates with Canvas and ClassLink, provides resources that include a variety of assessments and opportunities for kids to demonstrate their learning. As with all previous textbook recommendations, offline access is included when students need it. Finally, we explore the top recommendations for AP Human Geography. For this course, the committee selected Human Geography, a Spatial Perspective AP Edition textbook for the projected 1,800 students enrolled in this course. The implementation timeline for this book is also 7 years. And as with AP US History, this cost includes a digital text for each enrolled student and 1 class set of 15 for each teacher to support small group instruction as well as meet individual students' needs. We'll now explore the committee's rationale for this recommendation. The committee offered the following rationale behind their top choice, Cengage's Human Geography, a Spatial Perspective AP Edition. The committee honored its core focus and provided their recommendation around the strong alignment to College Board objectives and support of the Future Ready profile. Committee feedback highlighted the textbook resources available for students as well as the detailed and visually appealing maps and charts with recent data and the offline access capability. The digital platform also integrates with ClassLink and Canvas, provides robust digital resources, interactivity, and multiple assessment types to support the AP exam preparation. Thank you for your consideration of these adoptions. We look forward to returning at the end of the month for your consent. And at this time, as needed, I will invite our math and social studies team to answer what questions you might have.
Okay, Ms. Rogers.
Yes, okay, so, I don't know if this is going to be for you or for Dr. Robertson. All of the cost estimates are about 3% per year. Is that something we're going to contract for that 3%, or is that, I don't know how that works, so I'm just asking.
Yeah, we have a textbook fund, and we make sure the funds are available to pay for any of these decisions.
Right, but I mean, are we estimating the cost per year that it's just going to go up 3%, or do we contract in that specific number? I guess that's my question.
Mr. Quinn?
I believe the contract purpose, our procurement department handles all negotiations, so within that, there's a 3% range that publishers are allowed to charge for
So it
increase over time.
won't be above that?
It should not. Our procurement department will take care of that. I'll go right to their office for you.
That was my question, because a lot of our, we're talking about budget, and so if we're projecting up to 3%, and that's the max, then we are going to say that, yes, this will be more expensive, less expensive based on that 3%. So that was my
Usually
question.
written into the language of the contract.
Right. That's why I was asking, though. If they usually don't do more than 3%, then that's great.
Correct.
Thank you.
Yep.
Mr. Callen.
Mr. Quinn, I don't have any questions for you, but I would like you to know that I took this recommendation that you're making in reference to the AP US History seriously and immediately realized I don't have any history, no pun intended, in evaluating textbooks and determining whether they're appropriate or not. But my role here requires me to come to a conclusion in a couple of weeks and offer an opinion. So I asked for and received a copy of the textbook itself and spent the weekend going through it.
And what I was prompted by was a book that I read recently that dealt with history, and it's entitled If You Can Keep It. The subtitle is The Forgotten Promise of American Liberty. And I thought, well, maybe this will be helpful. And I remember reading early on the reason, first of all, for the title itself. You probably have heard of this before, but there's an event in 1787 where I'm all of a sudden drawing a blank on the critical figure that's involved, Benjamin Franklin. Sorry. My age revealed itself. A gentleman who is a member of the committee that's establishing the Constitution overheard a conversation that was heard on the street in Philadelphia, and it was done by a Mrs. Powell. Mrs. Powell comes up to Mr. Franklin, and they're aware of what they're going through and what they're doing. And so she says to him, well, doctor, now that you've concluded this process, what have we got? Is it a republic or is it a monarchy? And he said, Franklin, who was rarely short of words of wit, shot back, a republic, madam, if you can keep it. Referencing the fact that the difficulty awaits you in trying to maintain a representative republic. As the story unfolds, there got to a point where it captured my attention. He's talking about the fact that we don't recognize our heroes as it relates to the telling of the historical story. And he says it is the real heroes and the stories of heroes like Washington and Nathan Hale and others that help us to properly feel the power of the ideas behind them. We must feel the horror of tyranny and must love the noble idea of liberty. Bottom line, we must love America. And it caused me to put the book down because I realized, when do you hear in this extremely divided culture that we live in, when do you hear people even talking about upholding the principle of working through all of our difficulties, but not losing sight of the need and the importance of loving our country? So with that as what prompted me to say, let me take a peek at this book. And the first thing that I did when you do anything in this day and age is you have questions that you want an answer to, and you say, let's go to Google. So my first question was, based on age categories, what do people feel about this country? And it was stunning. As of 2024 and 2025, only 18% of those in the age 18 to 34 category, otherwise known as Gen Z or millennials, only 18% consider themselves extremely proud to be an American.
Point of order.
Yes.
I'm not sure if this has to do with the books.
Mr. Callen, does this have to do with the book?
Yes.
Okay.
In my humble opinion.
Continue.
It represents the process that was involved. So, as the story goes on, however, those who were 55 and older, getting close to my age group, 50% of them are extremely proud. And then when you get to the baby boomers, born between 1946 and 1964, 65% of them regard themselves as highly patriotic. And I thought, I'm asked to evaluate a history book. I wonder what impression I'm going to be left with as I go through it. But again, having not done an analysis of a textbook before, once again, I came up with a question to ask Google. What of the 25 major achievements that have happened in this country since its founding up until the 250th year that we're celebrating this year? The 25 included, not surprisingly, the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, the abolition of slavery, women's suffrage, civil rights movement, mass production, electricity infrastructure, and on it went. However, there were other things, and this is where it pertains, Ms. Rogers, just to make sure I'm tying it into the process. What are things we've done that this book makes no reference to, from what I can tell in my weekend reading? No reference to the fact that we have a peaceful transfer of power from one administration and executive to another. Yes, it's had its moments when it's challenged, but it never spoke about that. Surprisingly, it never made reference to the moon landing. It never made reference to the internet and the establishment of that, and starting through the military. It never made reference to the polio vaccine discovery by Jonas Salk. It did make reference to FDR had polio. It didn't make reference to the Wright brothers and modern flight. Nuclear energy, the GI Bill, the westward expansion and the Homestead Act, the construction of the Panama Canal, Allied victory in World War II, other than a reference, it was minimal in reference to World War II, but what it did speak about was the bombing of Hiroshima. What was also missing was the Marshall Plan, Peace Corps, the Louisiana Purchase, the Transcontinental Railroad. Bottom line, the question that I was seeking, warts and all, which I am fully in favor of us discussing and elaborating on the good, the bad, and the ugly. But does it leave me with a sense of, despite our flaws and shortcomings, and despite, as the Constitution starts off, we the people of the United States, in order to establish a more perfect union, the realization that this is something we work on every single day and we don't have it right, but we're trying to make a more perfect union. The question that I was trying to ask myself as a school board member relative to voting on this book, does it leave me still with the impression to love this country, or does it make me ashamed of this country? And speaking as only for myself as I can, it left me with a sense of regret and shame, as opposed to warts and all. Somebody mentioned it, I don't know if it was here today or not. But despite its flaws, being born in the United States of America was an opportunity for each one of us to recognize we won the lottery. We have been blessed beyond. And I didn't feel this textbook left me with that sense of love of country that I was looking for. So it's an imperfect process that I went through. I get it. Again, not being a committee or a member of a committee analyzing it, but being asked to give you my opinion. I wanted to at least explain that there was a process that I underwent in my imperfect way, but it was an attempt to try and answer this question. And I acknowledge the hard work that was done by all who were members of the committee, and I'm not criticizing their efforts at all. I'm just telling you what it left me with, and I wanted you to know that. Thank you.
Mr. Cummings.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing about these book recommendations, and I appreciate my colleagues' interest in requesting a physical copy of some of the books. I'll probably not take up that I probably won't follow that process for the AP Calculus book. I'm just going to throw that out there right now. But you know, if one's available in the pathway outside, maybe I'll glance at it real quick. But I do appreciate that deeper dive, and I think in future, you know, I was actually sitting and thinking, prior to you talking, was Googling some of the books just to gain some insight. And so my questions aren't more so on the content, you know, because I know my questions are more on just a clarification on the tables with the pricing. So if I read this correctly, we have an implementation cost, and then the 4-year additional cost estimate. Is that one? So looking at grades 6 through 8 mathematics implementation cost.
We can go with that one.
Yep. Is the 111,000, is that year over year, or is that just the total cost over 4 years?
It's going to be the projected cost. It could be
So
to
each year, right?
And it's an estimate, and I say that with the reality of your enrollment could change from year to year in that particular course. You may or may not need the digital licenses. It could be for replacements. Not that you're going to lose a digital textbook, but the physical ones sometimes grow legs.
So
So
I
I think those are the things that we try to project within the course so that we're covered for the duration of the contract.
Okay, so yeah, so that's just the estimate year over year. So I think like maybe adding, and this is not, I mean, I think I understood everything. I was sitting here doing napkin math, but I think just if we could have like a, you know, in this case, this is a 4-year estimate. I think having a final row or column that has like total cost over the duration, I don't know, I think that'd be helpful as we're in budget season. You know, as I was just trying to understand everything and understand how much books cost per student and all those wonderful pieces. But I do appreciate the team's recommendations. I had some good conversations months ago about, you know, curriculum selection, and so I know the work is very, you know, is steady. You know, it's exciting to hear about the rubrics utilized when analyzing books, and knowing that some of these courses, you know, do count for college credit, and so having that rigor there and that, you know, level of academic learning, I understand why there's some depth to some of the material, so I appreciate that. But that's all. Thank you.
Ms. Rogers?
Hi again. So sorry that you have to circle back to me. I just have a quick question. So this is all AP classes except for the 6th and 7th grade classes, right?
No, we have, I believe, AP Calculus, the AP VAUS, and the AP Human Geography are the three. And there's an AB and BC version of Calculus.
Okay. And so you are obviously not the only person that looks at these, correct?
As an individual?
Right.
No.
No. And
We establish a committee that's comprised of a a parent who's not a staff member. You have committees. We get a post-secondary professor.
Right. And so with AP, are there specific requirements that have to be met when you're looking at these textbooks with the AP textbooks and the SOLs? There are specific requirements that have to be met so that when we're teaching this information, that our students are getting the information that they need in order to pass the exams, correct?
Correct. Yeah, it's going to be aligned with the curriculum and the framework. And the AP example, it is going to be to the AP College framework. So
Right.
they create the curriculum. We have our curriculum from the state for SOLs. AP has its own curriculum, so we look for a book. There's never going to be a perfect book.
Right, right.
But we try to find the one that has the strongest alignment, hits the needs and the skills that we're looking to develop in our students.
Right.
And I'd like to, you know, for my own clarity's sake, it's more than an exam. I understand we
Yes.
love weighted grades. I know we love exams. Trust me, as a parent of a 10th grader, I'm like, yeah, that AP credit's looking really good right now. I need
Yeah,
you
I
to
have a
step
junior.
up. So,
I have a junior.
like 4s and 5s are definitely going to get rewarded. But yeah, I mean, we're trying to set the kids up for the long-term success.
Right.
Can you think critically on a level that is beyond your peers?
Right.
You know, to
So the
elevate their learning.
information, though, that is in the textbooks is going to align with the exams that the students have to take. So when
For the AP ones?
Yes.
Correct.
So that when there is specific content in that book, it's because the students have to learn it for their exam.
So I'll say it like this. The book is a resource.
Right.
We teach the program, and then you have the resource. So the course, I should say, we teach. The book is designed to help you.
Right.
Is it going to cover every single thing in the curriculum? It may or may not, depending on the book. Again, there's no perfect book.
Right.
So,
But all of the books that are intended for these courses are designed to help the students at the end to make sure they understand the material that is going to be asked of them.
Yes.
We wouldn't give a book about, you know, Virginia history to a student taking AP Human Geography because Virginia history is not going to be on there. That's not what we're asking them to learn. So my point is that you guys, as a committee, look for the books that are going to be the most beneficial to our students, which is really the point of us educating these kids, right?
we look for the best resource. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Dr. Green?
Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Quinn. I just wanted to make sure, in case someone may have missed it in the viewing public as well, that I see in your timeline that there is an opportunity for the community to review the textbooks and offer their feedback. Did you get much response from the community?
I don't believe we got a whole lot, no, ma'am. So we have the books on display here. They were displayed from October through November, and then we also put them at the Central Library. And then anyone that wishes, we can make a book available, like Mr. Collins did, since he had requested one, so we brought him a copy.
All right,
Yep,
thank you.
always available.
Right, I just wanted to make sure that the viewing public know that there was opportunity.
We would encourage them to join in the future.
review, the books that are being recommended.
Yep.
So this student enrollment number here, so let's just say it's the AP US History, it says 1050. Is that the 6-year anticipation or projection?
We take the average project enrollment.
Okay.
We know that it can fluctuate. We've not seen a dramatic increase in any particular course over the last couple of years now. That's always subject to change, but we tend to take the average enrollment as it goes over the last 3 years.
Thank you. You know, and I think that the community feedback part is really important. You know, I think as a board, maybe it might be useful if we get notification when those are about to be out for the community, so that way when the community asks us questions that we can tell them, hey, you know, you can review all of this over here, and it's out. So anyway, just kind of a thought. I would like to see the board get that notification so that, you know, those that really want to get into the weeds with those books and really provide the feedback, we're really getting that feedback. The other question I have here is this second choice book, is that available for review?
Which one are you referring?
I'm sorry, this AP US History implementation. I mean, we have to have a history book, right? So
Correct. It is required by College Board.
yeah. So
They were both on public display. I mean, we could easily provide a copy if you wanted to look at it as
all
well.
right, thank you. And I don't know if my colleague is interested in that, but I just wanted to make sure that was available, if my colleague is. And then, Dr. Robertson, you serve on the College Board, correct?
I do, advisory, yes.
Okay. I think a description of the AP US History course, there's a name for it here, I just searched it while we were sitting here. It's in our curriculum guide, okay. The course framework, is that something that you could send to the board?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. All right, thank you.
Chair, just real quick, sorry, I
Oh,
jumped
Mr.
back.
Cummings,
Yep.
sorry, didn't see you.
As
out
I
there.
hear the desire for book requests, are we asking that each board member gets a book or just one made available to all?
I think it's going to be, one would be in the clerk's office. Is that what we've done in the past when people have made requests for books? Yeah. And
Yes, one will be in the clerk's office.
we
at
do
your
vote
request.
on it, so, you know, if somebody wants to request it, I think it's fair that they get a look, so. We'll follow up via email if, so that everybody knows how they can review if they're interested. Does that sound like a plan? Dr. Robertson, do you think you could send the board that information too?
About signing up for the book?
Yes, just whatever the process is for
Sure.
being able to review the book.
When the public viewing period opens? Is that what you're?
No, I
No,
think we're
she's
talking about the
this
school
book.
board voting, and the school board wanting to review the book and how we're going to be able to review it at this time, so, just for those that are interested. Okay. I do not see any further
Madam
comments.
Chair.
Oh, yes.
My hand was up, sorry.
Oh, okay. Ms. Melnick.
Just kidding.
I also want to make sure the public understands that we also have government classes. So some of the topics that were mentioned in love of country, some of the topics mentioned might fall under some of our government classes, so. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we are now on to budget transfers, and we welcome Crystal Pate, Chief Financial Officer. And I do want to note that this one is on information and consent, so if any board members don't don't want to support it, we would need to move it off of consent when we get to the consent agenda. So just so everybody's aware. All right?
Good evening, Chair Brown, Vice Chairwoman Weems, school board members, and Dr. Robertson. For informational purposes this evening, we are bringing forward 2 fiscal year 2025-2026 budget transfers for the board's review. School board approval is required for budget transfers that exceed the superintendent's authorization threshold of $250,000. The first transfer, totaling $1.1 million, addresses an increase in McKinney-Vento transportation costs. To fund this transfer, we are proposing the use of remaining funds from the Summer School Cost Center, which had a surplus at the conclusion of the summer session, as well as unexpended funds from the middle and high school classroom cost centers resulting from position vacancies. The second transfer in the amount of $270,000 covers increased electrical services costs. This transfer is proposed to be funded through unexpended funds within the high school classroom cost center, also attributable to position vacancies. And that concludes the presentation. Be glad to answer any questions you may have.
Ms. Rogers.
This is for last school year. This is not for the ongoing year.
It's the ongoing school year. Last school year is closed.
Okay, so some of these, I'm just asking because I'm trying to understand. These are for positions that aren't filled. So then is it our intention to not fill them at all this year?
No, part of this is just it's just the process. So we budget for positions at a certain point when we build the budget. We usually average anywhere from 350, 400 vacancies we budget for. There's an ebb and flow of that.
Right.
So some of them get filled mid-year. Sometimes we lose staff that are been senior, like.
Right. Yeah.
So it's a combination of things that lead to those differences in what is originally budgeted and what we actually expend throughout the year. So it could be
this
vacant.
isn't, bottom line, going to upset our budget.
It is not going to upset our
Thank
budget.
you.
Mr. Count.
Yes, I just wanted to confirm, did you say the $1.1 million transfer in the category of social workers and other purchase services is for McKinney-Vento services? Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and that again is a transportation
That is
that's
the federal
available for the
program.
homeless?
Yes, sir.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Okay. I don't see any more questions. Ms. Melnick's hand isn't raised, correct? Okay, thank you. All right, we are now back to the budget workshop, and we're going to welcome Jack Freeman and Melissa Ingram.
All right, so big mental shift, going back to the budget workshop. So the process that we've been going through is to prepare adequately so that when we get to the superintendent estimate of needs, that we've done a lot of the work and we have an understanding of where we've been and where we're moving. So for this one, what you're going to see is the current year's capital program and the information related to the capital program. And the reason why we're giving it to you now is so that we all have a baseline understanding where we were this year, so that when the CON is presented, that you can see the changes. And clearly that CON is going to reflect the updated guidance that we've received from the board throughout the course of the year. So with that, when you look at the numbers, just remember we're talking about this year's numbers, and that's going to prep for next the CON when we present for next year. So with that, Ms. Ingram will walk you through it.
Okay, good evening. Thank you very much for your time today. I also want to say, thank you. As Jack mentioned, we are preparing for the upcoming CON. I want to thank the board, the city, and the budget office for their time since last budget process to talk about CIP needs. So this first slide we have here is showing our approved funding summary for this current 25-26 CIP, shown in the blue sections and totaled at the bottom of the page with total level funding of $61.8 million moving forward in the 6-year CIP annually. Outlined in red in the middle of the page is PAYGO, which is planned to continue to increase with an equal decrease in the special reserve fund or planned reversion, which is shown at the bottom of the list, just above the total. Bond sources are other funding sources shown on this page. Those include charter bonds, public facility revenue bonds, and energy performance contracts funding, and those remain flat throughout the 6 years. As a reminder, the guidance we received was to remain in a flat funding environment. At the top of the slide in green, figures are shown here for the debt service budget plan approved last year. Our current debt service budget is $50 million. This plan was approved last year to plan for capacity for Princess Anne High School. We're updating these figures now with our consultant, Davenport. So this graph visually shows our approved budget funding sources and how they are split between our maintenance-related capital system replacements in the green and new construction in the light blue, reflecting the importance of our maintenance-related capital projects throughout the 6-year CIP. Fully funded in last year's CIP is Tri-Campus Additions. In the upcoming CION, the one we're preparing for February 24th, we will be planning for fully funding Princess Anne High School, which will result in an increase of the funding sources for new construction, or the light blue portion of this graph in front of you. And that will have a corresponding decrease on the maintenance-related projects in the green. And so now we're going to take a more detailed look at the funding summary. You can see at the bottom again our level funding of $61.8 million. Highlighted on the middle of the page in red over to the left are some of our maintenance-related projects, our HVAC, roofs, as well as grounds and various that we are still working to catch up on deferred maintenance. We are making great progress as we've briefed you in our facilities update. However, we still have a way to go on these projects. Highlighted in yellow are the new construction projects with their projected project costs, considering associated bid dates. In the middle of the page is the Tri-Campus Additions, which is on track for a summer 2026 construction start, with design almost complete and a bid contract to be presented to the board for approval in about 2 months. Students will be able to occupy the additions in school year 28-29. At the top of the page, highlighted in yellow, is Princess Anne High School with the projected project cost for an estimated bid date of 2037. We have spoken about Princess Anne High School at length with the board, and again, thank you for your time in discussing our CIP needs through the course of this year. And we have received guidance from the board to move this project forward. Therefore, the next time you see this project in the CION, it will have the associated project budget reduced for an estimated 2028 bid or guaranteed maximum price, and will be fully funded in the 6-year CIP through appropriations in the needed years to accomplish the project. And that will occur with corresponding reductions in the maintenance-related appropriations that we looked at in the beginning of looking at this slide. And so our next slide here shows our currently approved debt service plan. Again, this is for fiscal year 25-26, our current fiscal year, and it's in a graph format for you. Shown on the graph in the dark green is our existing debt service. Light green shows some of the new debt service that's estimated for our maintenance-related CIP projects. And shown in tan is the Tri-Campus Additions. All of these together keep us within the current debt service budget of $50 million, as you can see from the graph moving forward. Shown in red, that red line, is the debt service plan approved last year, and we reviewed these numbers on the first slide when we reviewed funding sources. This plan gives consideration for having enough capacity in debt service. The red line shows the plan of increasing the debt service budget incrementally over the next 6 years to accomplish Princess Anne High School. We are updating this information with our financial consultant Davenport, and the next time you see this graph, you will also see the need shown for Princess Anne High School for a proposed 2028 bid or GMP. And our last table here shows these new construction projects from this current year CIP. And as a recap of what I've shared earlier, Tri-Campus additions is on track. Princess Anne High School is currently being recalculated for an earlier construction start date, and Bayside High School remains in the 6-year CIP. So to wrap up, in terms of what to expect in the upcoming CON for the 6-year CIP, for Princess Anne High School, again, we have begun the solicitation process for a progressive design build delivery model with a request for qualifications or RFQ currently advertised. For the Tri-Campus additions, design is underway for Newtown and Diamond Springs Elementary Schools, with construction to begin this summer of 2026. In terms of our maintenance projects, they remain a priority in keeping our buildings well-maintained. Listed on this slide are some of those projects that we have discussed with you that we continue to work towards moving out of deferment. And with all of the above considered, we will continue to plan for debt service in this upcoming 6-year CIP. Shown on this slide are 2 Virginia legislative bills, House Bill 334 and Senate Bill 607. And I want to thank the budget team for sharing these with us when they were made aware of them, which they're making their way currently through the General Assembly. These bills may present an opportunity, if advanced, by making additional funding sources available for us. Both bills proposed would allow counties and cities to add a local sales tax of up to 1% if a version passes. The revenue generated from this tax could only be used for capital projects, such as building a new school or renovating existing facilities. Voters would have to approve the tax through a referendum in an election before it could take effect. So with that, I want to thank you again for your time today in reviewing aspects of the CIP. And again, as a reminder, everything I've shared with you today is a baseline so that when we present the CON on February 24th, you can see the changes that we have been working on as a result of updated guidance. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions you might have.
So I'm very excited about the work that we've done here, and I just want to thank you all for working with us and making sure that, we were involved, that RFQ is out. I just want to make sure that the public knows that requests for qualifications are public. You can find them on the website. Anybody can download the packet. It's got quite a bit in there. There's a lot of attachments from, the work that was done with the prior PPEA, the Public-Private Education Infrastructure Act, a few years ago with the 3 builds. I feel like this board has done some really great work, finding some creative ways forward to try to get things done faster. And so I'm happy that we're continuing that work. And I just did want to ask, though, about this slide. It doesn't have a number here, but you did say that the numbers for the total estimated project costs are likely to change, correct?
That is correct. Well, we're looking at, all of those are based on a projected bid date. So we've moved Princess Anne High School, if you're speaking of that one, from a 2037 bid date to a 2028 is what we're projecting for now.
Okay, and so those projections are based on the design from the previous PPEA and the guaranteed maximum price currently and inflation, if I'm correct?
Correct.
So it's hopefully going to come in, we're hoping for less. We're still hoping to find a way to move forward with less expense to the community. Mr. Culpepper?
Just a quick question to clarify one of your slides, the one that has the red line for the projected debt service budget maximum. I'm just not sure what I'm looking at there. So obviously I understand what the red line is. That's the projected maximum for debt service that we're going to increase by $6 million a year. Is the colored section, is that the actual debt service?
So yes, so the, again, the dark green is what we actually have now, and then that looks forward 6 years, and that's where the light green and the tan come into play. And you are correct, there is a blank space in between the red line and what we're currently projecting, because we were not projecting during last year's CIP process to start Princess Anne High School until 2037.
Okay, so that's what the white space is for. That's where we
Correct.
can fill in with Princess Anne. Okay, got it.
Yep.
Thank you.
Dr. Green?
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Ingram, and I can hear the clapping all the way on the dais to District 4, because we will be groundbreaking this summer with the Tri-Campus. So thank you. With that being said, I think my question is probably more for Dr. Robertson. As I'm constantly out and about, Dr. Robertson, I get a lot of questions about how, and I don't expect you to answer this right now, how we're going to preserve the name of Betty F. Williams. So I request that maybe by the time we do groundbreaking this summer, we'll have a plan in place, maybe with putting a committee or something together with maybe a few community members as well, so we can have that ready for the following year or so when we open up that new campus.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. There's a policy that we follow related to that. Yes,
All right.
ma'am.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we have one more presentation here. I'll let you go ahead and take it away.
Well, thank you. This is the final department presentations. Good evening again. I'm Matt Delaney. I'm the Chief Schools Officer, and I'm also serving as the Interim Chief Academic Officer in the Department of Teaching and Learning, or as you'll hear me refer to, DTAL, throughout the rest of this presentation. Just know in my role as Chief Schools Officer, I've always worked very closely with the Chief Academic Officer in the Department of Teaching and Learning. Our departments really partner a lot to provide most of the leadership guidance, oversight, and support of all instructional programming and support services. DTAL supports schools and students by developing high-quality curriculum, assessments, instructional materials, and running many programs that serve students, staff, and families. The teams provide mandated student services, provide in-school teacher support and instructional coaching, support schools in following state and federal regulations, and understanding their role in compliance to Virginia code and legislation. As noted in all of our departmental presentations, we've used the guiding principles outlined on the slide for financial stewardship. You'll be able to see elements of these principles throughout the presentation. This slide shows DTAL's total FTEs, the majority of which, 2,241.25, are allocated to the schools. I'm going to restate that fact as I recall Dr. Green's statement last week in the docile presentation. 2,241.25 of those allocations are to the schools. To put this in perspective, more than 1,200 of these FTEs are for special education teachers and assistants alone. This number also includes administrative assistants, instructional technology specialists, school counselors, gifted resource teachers, school improvement specialists, CTE teachers, coaches, and behavioral intervention specialists. There are also 242 FTEs allocated to the DTAL offices. Again, it's important to know that even though they are centrally assigned, they spend the majority of their time in schools, co-teaching, coaching, and supporting students and staff, as the director assigns each to a set of schools to support. This group also includes our psychologists, our social workers, our ideologists, our AVID specialists, just to name a few. The leadership team in DTAL is listed on the slide. Dr. Lorena Kelly and Mr. Thomas Quinn, who oversee elementary and secondary teaching and learning. As part of their offices also include Ms. Laura Silverman, who oversees Title I and pre-K, and Dr. Sarah Lockett, who oversees CTE. Dr. Myers-Dobb and Ms. Tanya Sotomayor oversee the Office of Programs for Exceptional Children. Mr. Robert Jameson and Ms. Abigail Doherty oversee Student Services. Dr. Crystal Wilkinson is the Director of all K-12 programs, including ESL, World Languages, Health PE, Performing and Visual Arts, and Gifted programs. Dr. Ryan Goldberg leads Instructional Technology, Library Media, and Virginia Beach Digital Campus. As you can see on the slide, the amended fiscal year 25-26 budget was $290,382,778. On the upcoming slides, I'm going to provide a snapshot of the work the central office team members do each day to ensure our school staffs, teachers, and students are successful. DTAL is the division's largest department and oversees many of our core instructional and support functions. Our work is grounded in the teaching and learning framework, which focuses on the principles of how we plan, teach, assess, and respond to student learning and student needs. The school board is very familiar with the key responsibilities of this department, as we presented much of this information at previous meetings, including the October 28th workshop. This slide highlights key work of career and technical education, elementary and secondary teaching and learning in the middle column, and student support services. I'm going to hit a couple of highlights as I give you a moment to review. As you're reviewing, many of these functions are state or federally monitored and mandated, while others reflect our longstanding commitment to providing rigorous, innovative opportunities, such as academies, advanced course offerings, career and technical programs, and student interventions to ensure graduates are meaningfully enrolled, enlisted, or employed. I want to draw you to a couple of items on here just to show some things that are in the works. If you look in the CTE column, you'll see the STEM trifecta. This is scheduled for February 24th. It's also this year going to include a career expo that's going to house all of our 7th grade students who are coming over to the convention center. Really excited about that work. That's February 24th. On the elementary, secondary, and student services had a major impact on this. You'll see the student reading plan guidance and support. So I want to draw your attention that over 10,000 students and 6,000 reading plans are combined in our elementary and secondary schools right now. Very comprehensive effort by this team to ensure that process was as fluid and as meaningful to support our students in need of that support. And then in student support services, I'll draw the attention, there's several you could look at there, but AVID is one area where you've seen a significant focus on our middle school and high schools, and today all secondary implementation teams were involved in training. Also like to obviously highlight the work of Harbor Hope Recovery School and Mr. Jameson's efforts to lead that work has certainly put us on the map in the region. And finally, I'd like to highlight that in 24-25, DTAL supported students earning 14,500 industry credentials, managed over $1 million in grant funding to support student programs. We offered over a significant number of unique secondary courses in addition to the core and elective courses. These examples really reflect the significant work required to keep our system operating at a high level. This slide highlights the key functions performed by the Office of Programs for Exceptional Children, also known as OPEC, the Instructional Technology Department, our office, and the K-12 and gifted programs. Again, there's many areas that you can review on this slide, but I'm going to hit a couple of highlights. At the top of the OPEC column on the left, you will notice the emphasis on compliance and specially designed instruction. All administrators in elementary, middle, and high school have received extensive training in this area, led by Dr. Myers-Dobb and Mrs. Sotomayor. Specially designed instruction is really a key focus as we continue to work on supporting our neediest learners. Instructional technology, you've heard much about their efforts throughout the year in digital citizenship and AI. Turnkey trainings have been completed on the high school level, and our elementary and middle school staff are working through that process as well. And then finally, in K-12 and gifted, you've seen the implementation, or we're working on the implementation of the school board approved gifted plan, and also providing supports to our increasing English language learner population. You probably noted all offices in DTAL have the key function of offering resources and professional learning, much of which is driven by legislation and some of which is optional to staff. Just to give you an idea of this commitment, in 24-25, DTAL delivered over 930 formal professional learning sessions, serving 26,957 participants. This does not even include unrecorded in-school coaching and support, which happens daily. Because DTAL oversees mandated federal and state requirements and ensures alignment with Virginia code, any budget reductions must be carefully evaluated to minimize negative impact on students and staff, because the majority of the DTAL budget funds school-based staff and resources. Here you will see that DTAL has identified ways to restructure support and reduce positions to contribute to the funding needed to support a competitive compensation package. Again, these were proposed changes, and some of the key proposed changes include a reduction of 4 FTEs. This may, if those proposals are accepted, this may mean some offices will redistribute duties, and there might be sometimes a difference in the availability and the prioritization to school needs. We also reduced the amount across all cost centers. This was done by reducing several resources across multiple cost centers in a strategic manner to avoid any negative student implications. And finally, you've seen a lot of this discussion in the last few presentations, even today. Because this department is responsible for all the state and federal expectations and responding to legislation, approved curriculum material updates, and more, this department will always have budget requests to ensure we're in compliance and can support our schools. As you know, costs for materials do not stay the same either. They continue to rise, which impacts our budgeting annually. You've observed several of these budget items during Ms. Page's presentation, such as the McKinney-Vento, the positive news around federal funding for Lexia, which was in that report to support the Virginia Literacy Act, and Mr. Quinn's extensive presentation on textbooks, just to name a few. In closing, the Department of Teaching and Learning remains committed to challenging and supporting every student to achieve academic excellence while developing the skills and attributes outlined in the Future Ready profile. At this time, myself and many members of the team are here and prepared to answer any questions.
Dr. Green?
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Delaney. And mine is just more of a comment to the benefit of the public and for my colleagues. I think you shortchanged yourself in displaying everything that's done. And I'm going to take a personal liberty from having been on that side, such as I know in Ronnie's office, a lot of things are missing. And I know it's because of the restricted space and Lorena's and all. And I say that because I want everyone to understand that there is more that's not listed here. And I know even from my old area, Mr. Jameson, you don't have secondary summer school anymore? Oh, you still do? Okay. And then I notice, and my point is to give you examples of large things that are missing that they could not get in those little squares, such as the military academic support programs. I know that's still there as well. So, and I didn't see like some of the residential programs that Ronnie area has and some other big responsibilities, as well as with our instructional team. So thank you.
Ms. Rogers?
Thank you, Mr. Delaney, for this presentation. And I also want to say thank you for letting us know where a lot of your staff are allocated. It was really difficult to see where things are, and especially with the org chart, to understand that, teachers are under you and how many staff report to you within this large number. So, that's something that it's much easier to visualize once we have that information. And obviously, anytime you're talking about reduction, the last thing you want to do is reduce the staff that are affecting the children every day. And so they're the ones that should not be affected by budget constraints. They need to continue with their services and their programs and the educators that they love every day. So thank you for this presentation.
All right, I don't see any additional questions. I do appear to be, nope, that's draft. Is that today's? Okay, no. I appear to have misplaced my agenda, so there we go. All right. I don't see any additional questions, so we are now on to the consent agenda, and I just want to remind that budget transfers are on there, so if anyone objects, just let me know after I read it. to it being on consent. White Oaks Elementary School window and door replacement, religious exemptions, budget transfers. Are there any objections to the school board voting on the consent agenda as presented? Motion's made by Dr. Green, seconded by Ms. Dwyer. All those are in favor. The voting board is open for the consent agenda.
Ms. Melnick, how do you vote on the consent agenda?
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have 11 ayes. The motion did pass for the approval of the consent agenda.
Thank you. We are now on to personnel report and administrative appointments. I call for a motion to approve the personnel report and administrative appointments. Moved by Mr. Cummings, seconded by Ms. Rogers. Any discussion? Seeing none, I call for the vote to approve the personnel report and administrative appointments.
Ms. Melnick, how do you vote on the personnel report?
Yes.
Mr. Callen, how do you vote? Thank you, Madam Chair. We have 11 ayes. The motion to pass for the approval of the personnel report and administrative appointment.
Thank you. We are now on to committee organization and
Point of
board
order, Chair, we do have an administrative appointment.
Oh, yes. Dr. Robertson, do you have any administrative appointments?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. We're pleased tonight you've accepted our recommendation for Leah Donahue, currently instructional specialist in the Office of K-12 and Gifted Programs, to be the next coordinator of world languages in the Office of K-12 and Gifted Programs. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we are now on to committee organization and board reports. Do any board members have anything to report? Ms. Rogers?
Thank you. On February 6, 2026, I left District 5 to visit Cox High School in District 8. While there, I met my colleague, Mr. Callen, who is also visiting from District 6. We were not there for a program or a class, but to attend the Young Republicans Club meeting during one lunch, which occurred during the school day in order to hear Congresswoman Jen Kiggans speak to the students in the club. The Congresswoman brought pizza for the students to encourage their participation. While at the club meeting, we listened to Ms. Kiggans encourage the children to be involved in politics by telling them, quote, "Don't get mad, get off the couch and do something," end quote. We were able to observe with about half a dozen staff, some of whom were there to assist students with disabilities so those children could participate, as well as the club leader's parent. After about 45 minutes, the children were able to return to the learning environment and continue their day despite this exciting opportunity to interact with an elected official. A group photo of the students with the Congresswoman can be found on social media. On a side note, a colleague asked earlier, and I wanted to report that I did not see permission slips being brought into the library, but that does not mean they weren't submitted prior to my arrival. Thank you.
Okay, and Ms. Melnick's hand isn't raised? Okay, great. Vice Chair Weems, we do have I think it should be relatively quick closed session, so Vice Chair Weems is going to read us into closed.
I move that the school board recess into closed session in accordance with the exceptions to open meeting laws set forth in Code of Virginia 2.2-3711, Part A, Paragraph 7-8, as amended, to deliberate on the following matters. 7, consultation with legal counsel and briefings by staff members or consultants pertaining to actual or probable litigation, where such consultation or briefing in open meeting would adversely affect the negotiating or litigating posture of the public body. For the purposes of this subdivision, probable litigation means litigation that has been specifically threatened or in which the public body or its legal counsel has a reasonable basis to believe will be commenced by or against a known party. Nothing in this subdivision should be construed to permit the closure of a meeting merely because an attorney representing the public body is in attendance or is consulted on a matter. 8, consultation with legal counsel employed or retained by a public body regarding specific legal matters requiring the provision of legal advice by such counsel. Nothing in this subdivision shall be construed to permit the closure of a meeting merely because an attorney representing the public body is in attendance or is consulted on a matter. Namely, to discuss A, settlement offers in court matters, B, status of pending litigation or administrative cases, C, consultation with legal counsel regarding probable litigation and pending litigation matters.
Okay, motion made by Vice Chair Weems, seconded by Mr. Cummings. Any discussion? Seeing none, I call for the vote to go into closed session.
So, Madam Chair, we have 10 ayes. The motion did pass to go into closed session.
Whereas the School Board of the City of Virginia Beach has convened a closed meeting on the date pursuant to an affirmative recorded vote and in accordance with the provisions of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act, and whereas Section 2.2-3712 of the Code of Virginia requires a certification by the school board that such closed meeting was conducted in conformity with Virginia law. Now therefore be it resolved that the School Board of the City of Virginia Beach hereby certifies that to the best of each member's knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements by Virginia law were discussed in the closed meeting to which this certification applies, and only such public business matters as were identified in the motion by which the closed meeting was convened were heard, discussed, or considered.
Okay, motion to certify closed session was made by Ms. Dwyer, seconded by Mr. Culpepper. Any discussion? Seeing none, I call for the vote to certify closed session.
So, Madam Chair, we have 10 ayes. The motion did pass for certification of closed session.
Thank you. And I do want to note that next Tuesday is a special meeting related to budget. That will be at 4 p.m. And Dr. Robertson would like all questions, I would say by Friday morning because Monday is a holiday, so that it can be compiled for Tuesday. Does that sound good? Okay. All right. With that, we are adjourned at 9:21 p.m.